committee meeting. Just got a chairman's statement here to read. Please note that this meeting is being made available to the public through a live video and audio broadcast on Comcast Government Access Channel 15 and is being recorded for broadcast at future dates. Comments made in open session will be recorded. And we're ready for our meeting. We've got Luke on Zoom. Luke, can you hear us? And can we hear you?
Oh, good.
Perfect. Yes.
Testing.
We can. Excellent.
Okay.
So we're gonna. I figured just to respect all of our guests' time. We've got PAC TV here. We've got Luke on Zoom. Mr. Eng, hello, sir. We'll just start with our first agenda item: review, process, and implementation of public forum at Pembroke Public Library. Audio-video discussion with VHB and PAC TV. And I suppose we'll get started with that. PAC TV, maybe we should start with what kind of limitations that you're aware of that we're working with, and then Luke from VHB can offer his input and thoughts.
So over at the Pembroke Public Library, it is, we already have an existing pan-tilt zoom camera system in place. There's 3 cameras mounted along the perimeter of the room. And all of those are it's video IP based. So they have IP addresses, they use the internet there in the library, and that feeds into a piece of software that allows us to pick the different camera angles to bring in Zoom presentations from the laptop that's paired with that system. And, I love the idea of having the breakout tables. That's an excellent idea because you can, get more things done with the people who want to be involved in those subjects that are interested in. But for us to cover those individual tables, that's going to be a tricky thing. Now, there's an owl, and the owl, you kind of typically put it in the center of a table, and, it automatically, picks up whoever's speaking the loudest and adjusts that video picture to focus solely on the person who is talking the loudest. But I think it's going to be hard to cover the individual breakout tables with an owl because there's going to be so many conversations going on in that room, and it's even going to be tricky for us with the existing cameras that are in that room. We've got plenty of microphones to service that room, but for a Zoom participant, a remote participant, to be able to kind of chime in, it might be a little bit difficult because it's going to be hard for us to actually pinpoint what's being discussed at an individual table.
Okay. Yeah, I know that, Luke, you had mentioned using the owl. Some folks talked about using the owl. It sounds like there's there would be some complications with doing that, and maybe even just with the format of the public forum. So do you think that it's a matter of adjusting the format of the forum or adjusting the approach from the technical side? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, yeah, it's either one or the other, right? I think if we're really going to do this hybrid, then the breakout tables might not make sense for the meeting because I don't see any way that we could realistically have 8 stations somehow being represented for folks at home in any sort of manageable way for them, unless we gave them, the people that are joining in remotely, their own breakout rooms within the Teams call or something, but that would get kind of complicated and require a lot of people to do the coordination. So I think that's one option, which is to go hybrid and maybe dissolve all the different breakout sessions and just have one conversation. Or second option is allow the breakout rooms to happen. Sorry, and by the way, you're catching me, I think, before Julia and I have really had a chance to sit down and plan and fully plan out the agenda for the meeting. So I guess it's an open book at this point.
Yeah.
But I agree. So yeah, it's going to be hard to do the 8 breakout stations online.
When we may I jump in real quick?
Yeah, so it's open.
When we ran a breakout room for the open space and recreation implementation plan back in Norwell, it was fully online. So my thought would be to run if we were to do this, is to, and I totally understand where you guys are coming from, 100%. My proposed solution would be to run a parallel hybrid, or a parallel online forum. I guess online's a parallel Zoom forum, you know, where we're somebody like either you, me, Luke, Julia, whoever is facilitating that conversation, so they feel that they can participate. Maybe they want to chime in about housing, they've got thoughts on water, they've got thoughts on recreation, or whatever. We're just kind of facilitating those thoughts. So they've kind of got their own, they're basically walking in and putting their own post-it notes on their own poster boards, but it's being facilitated parallel, but at least giving an option during that set 6 to 8 time.
I think personally, yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting idea, to have like a parallel, working station in a sense, and someone probably from VHB would make sense, if we were to go that route, someone from VHB to kind of control that digital room that people can interact with. Have you guys ever done a format like that before? Or would this be novel for you guys?
I think it would be a bit unique. I think it's, what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, for the folks that are in the room, they will be in breakout discussions that are topical. Now, for the folks that are on their computer, it sounds like, George, if I'm hearing you right, they would just have their own sort of all-purpose breakout room that wasn't divided by subjects or topics. It was just the folks that are online, which is fine. Is that what you're saying, George, though?
That's what I'm saying, is I don't think we can have it, you know, all ways, right? I think that like when,
Right,
you know, we did ours with MAPC, Massachusetts Area Planning Council, or yeah. So they were able to facilitate like breakout rooms, but all online. So if you wanted to talk about conservation, you chose to go into that breakout room. You know, there was kind of a main keynote, and then you went into that breakout online. But I was on Zoom, you were on Zoom, we were all in our pajamas in our basements or whatever. So it would be kind of an all-purpose chat room to talk about the issues that are pertinent to you, to get your point across, and then, you know, maybe you just log off.
Yeah, I think that, I'd be fine with that. And then that way, people who can attend in person have the opportunity to go to topical breakout discussions. And the folks who are joining online might not have that opportunity, but they'd still be able to hear the presentation at the beginning, and they'd still have a chance to make their voices heard in a forum with their peers who are also online. So it would be a different experience for people who are attending in person versus people who are attending online, and I'm okay with that. I think that what matters is we're going to reach a broader audience than if we had only done it in person. So to me, that sounds doable. I'd be totally okay with that.
What does everybody else? Can we get some more input from the MPCC?
So I'm just trying to visualize this. So it's just one breakout room? Is that what you're saying? Or are we doing like everybody has a laptop at their station and you do a bunch of breakout rooms and then?
No, I think we've determined that's not feasible.
That's not feasible.
That's not feasible. What we're talking about is just having one kind of virtual breakout room where they can it's kind of more free.
So it really wouldn't be a breakout room, it would just be like a Zoom.
They'd just
Yeah,
go in the
yeah.
chat and say what they think.
Or talk, or whatever.
Yeah, like kind of what I'm kind of envisioning of what I'm hearing about all this is, let's say, you know, the public forum starts, there's a presentation period, and then after that, when the in-person, the public forum goes, okay, now we're gonna go into our breakout sessions, maybe you'll have some breakout sessions that are in person at the public forum at the library, but then in the digital all-purpose breakout room, that'll be when you'll have members of the public who are connected remotely can interact with the member from VHB, send in questions, send in inputs. It's not focused on one particular section, but it's all purpose, and then they can kind of manage that, take all that input, respond to questions, and that will go on and on until then maybe we're ready for kind of closing statements or closing presentation as to the kind of information that we got from the breakout sessions in person, as well as some interesting feedback that was maybe received from the digital all-purpose room as well. That's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Yeah.
So
I would
I'm
hope that the
thinking-
VHB person, knowing that we don't want it to turn into like Thunderdome, you know, they want to like facilitate it in a way that makes sure that we stay somewhat topical and, stays in those, those boxes of, boxes of
I-
categories of action items.
I think that the group that's online would have their own breakout discussion. In other words, while everybody in the room was visiting the little stations, the people online would be having a conversation with the other people who are online. And that could be moderated by a VHB person who's at home, like DJing from their laptop sort of thing. Our coworker Jenny, who I think you guys have met before, she's done that for us before in hybrid settings. She hangs back at home and she jumps on and helps move people around in the Teams or Zoom call or whatever. So I think we could probably get her to do that, lead that conversation, and she can just, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it is, she can facilitate a dialogue and answer questions and allow people to speak and, yeah.
Personally, I mean, I think this makes a lot of sense. I think it's a great idea. I think it's already kind of coming together from the remote side. What's the pleasure of the committee? What do you guys think?
I'd be curious to know what PAC TV thinks of this option. Is this the best option for us to engage the public?
I wonder if you would consider, do the opening statement, have the individual breakout tables, and then if that period only lasts about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, then each individual table kind of presents their, findings at the table, and that would be an opportunity for the people zooming in to chime in with their questions and concerns. It might lengthen the meeting, granted, but at the very least, we still have a quick, efficient way to go in and have the breakout tables, but then each individual table presents their findings at their tables, and then that gives an opportunity for the Zoomers to, voice their opinions as well.
I love that idea. The only issue that I see is that our first public meeting went much longer than anticipated, and we only have that room for 2 hours because the library closes at 8. So we'll be,
And it's not so much, it is partially presentation at those tables, but we want to have some interaction too, so we'll be there for a while.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
yeah, but it's a good idea.
It's a
I
good
mean,
idea.
I don't know if this,
I don't remember us coming back together afterwards. I just remember doing the boards and we were all walking around and we were putting the Post-it notes on there, but did we
didn't
collaborate afterwards,
no,
right?
no.
We didn't,
I
so.
don't think we did.
We didn't collaborate afterwards. Did VHB do like a quick kind of presentation or kind of a quick view of like each section? Like, hey, here's some of the sticky notes that were on, natural resources. Did we do that? I don't
No.
remember.
I think that was later on.
They
That
took
was
all,
later,
they
yeah.
took it all home.
They just took it with them. That's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah, I took a bunch of pictures.
Yeah,
and put them
because,
on Pembroke
it wasn't like each table was a group of people that was at that table the whole time.
Yeah.
And then the group could then report out because people were mobile the whole time. Some people went to every station, so I could almost picture it happening if there was one person from the committee, for example, or me or Julia, who was assigned to each station. And I keep saying 8, I guess the number is 7, because you have 7 chapters. So it would be 7 stations. And then those people who are assigned to be the sort of champion, or shepherd, or whatever, Sherpa, of each station could then give a few minutes, report back to the room. So it would just need to be, it would be a schedule consideration, but I guess I'll defer to the committee on whether you want to do that.
How long did we say we expect the presentation to be? The opening presentation?
How long is the opening presentation though?
Well, we're flexible. I mean, we know whatever time we need to fill, we can do
We're not
that.
being introduced this time, so.
No.
Yeah,
It's
So
off the
shortly
table.
by about 45 minutes.
Disallowed.
they met us once, that's it.
And I do think, for example, like, a lot of like the kind of details in terms of how the format of the public forum should go in this exact structure, I don't know if it'll be so easy for us to determine that here. So it could be something where we kind of determine, hey, do we like the idea of a parallel all-purpose kind of breakout session for the Zoom people? It's less of this kind of back and forth conversation, real-time thing with everyone. And then VHB and PAC TV can kind of structure behind the scenes what the agenda and what the format and the timeline will look like. And then just kind of tell us, hey, this is what PAC TV and VHB came together on. If we mostly agree at a high level as to how it should work to reach out in that remote fashion, then maybe that's the best way to do it. What do you guys think?
I agree, I don't think it's up to us to manage all the tiny little details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I feel like
makes
the
more sense for
framework,
them too.
I feel like we set the framework and then let PAC TV and VHB figure out the technical limitations and work with that, and then give that to us, and then we're gonna run with it. I don't want us to be a wedge that complicates your jobs more than necessary.
What's the topic of each station? So are people gonna be reading
chapter.
what we have each chapter, so they'll be able to
Breakout station
review
is a
it, so
chapter.
each breaks it, and then they're just going to say what they think?
Well, hopefully we'll have like, I think the existing like action items or goals like kind of posted so that they kind of, I think the one thing that I know going into these, I assume going into this community engagement, summit, is that we're meeting people at all different levels of their like knowledge of the master plan, right? There's gonna be people that show up that are just like, we're working on a master plan, and then there's gonna be people that, obviously us, that have been a lot more engrossed in the product that we have in front of us, and everywhere, in between, that they just think that it's like, we're just gonna, I just have stuff to say. And then, so I think that we need to be aware of that, and doing it, kind of staying in that like parallel form allows for a facilitator to kind of, meet those people at where they're at versus us kind of waiting and, meeting those people where they're at while we're meeting those people where they're at like live and in person.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I think that I really like about the idea of the parallel all-purpose breakout session is the big purpose of that is to accommodate those who are remotely. And we'll kind of be, it sounds like we'll be maybe mostly in our own silos in the sense of, remote will be able to watch the presentation, the initial presentation remotely, and have that interaction with someone from VHB. They'll be mostly in a silo there, and we'll be kind of in our own breakout sessions, our own separate breakout sessions in the public forum in that silo. So there won't be much cross-pollination as I would envision it. I feel like that could really complicate things, but if there's a way that VHB and PAC TV behind the scenes, you guys come together, as a way to work out that format, that could be helpful. I like the idea personally of, the different breakout tables based on the sections. Maybe there's obviously a copy of the master plan there as well, that people can view a few copies at each table, and people just give their feedback on each section, on the action items, the goals, and contribute more feedback on what they think about the existing action items and goals, and then anything else that they want to contribute.
Should it be just that chapter, that section at that table, not the whole plan, but that way they're going around the room, they're not looking at they're looking at that specific chapter.
That's kind of my thought, but I mean,
Yeah.
what do you guys think
I would
too?
think so, I mean, there's
Yeah.
15 pages alone in housing, so I
Exactly,
think that
you
people
don't want
are
the
gonna.
whole.
Both at the door.
It's not enough time to sit there
Exactly.
and read it. I
Exactly.
feel like we should preface it with, it's online now, read it before you come, so you're prepared. Especially the people online, because if they're watching from home, you
Yeah.
can't hand it to them.
You can send them the link.
Yeah.
My only concern with this whole plan is if there are people, neither there or online, that are interested in several chapters. You can't appease people that are interested in 4 chapters because we only have 2 hours.
Yeah.
So does that mean that the people who want to comment on 3 or 4 chapters, are they only gonna be commenting on maybe 1 or 2? You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure the time constraint is gonna make it work. That's my only concern.
I think we're there for an hour, and we got 30 minutes, let's say, of a 30-minute pre-presentation, like, opening statement, maybe it's less. And then they got an hour and a half to kind of walk the room and kind of drop their 2 cents on, whatever is, whatever axe they have to grind, or idea they have, or nugget they want to share, what's missing from the action, what's missing from the master plan. Hopefully they come somewhat prepared, like you said, with some knowledge. We can't expect,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that makes sense. It's a big bulk, big a bunch of, the big bulk of the actual public forum itself will be people prioritizing for themselves which stations they want to go to and how much time they want to spend on the specific issues that they want to talk about, and then put them, whether it's on sticky notes like we did before, onto, a big piece of paper like VHB did, or if it's a little bit of a different format. Personally, I thought that was as productive as it can be.
I
with-
like the sticky note.
I thought I liked it
That
too,
way-
yeah.
That way everybody's writing down their own ideas and it's kinda.
Yep. And yeah, people have an hour and a half, that's plenty of time for people to navigate the different tables and stations that they want. But I agree, I think what Sharon and you are saying are really important, that as we continue to engage the community leading up to this public forum, we let people know, hey, it's really important that you come prepared if you're gonna engage, so we can have productive conversations. So please read the master plan ahead of time, consume it, get your takeaways ready, so that way when you come, you can maximize the time that you have while you're there, instead of spending it, just getting up to speed.
Steve, how are you gonna get that word out to the
Yeah, I'm gonna
public?
communicate to them.
Aren't you doing an interview? Or you already?
Yeah, so I did just do a PAC TV interview the other day. Once that's ready, they edit and get that ready. Thank you guys, that was excellent. And that'll get blasted out. And then obviously I think we'll engage the community in our own separate ways. I'll use my select board, I'll go on Pembroke Connect Uncensored, whatever, the places that we want to go, and,
You can go there.
yeah. I'm in the Lion's Den.
And I think, I'm sure we can share it, but I think also, people can still go home and read and send us information off the website once the forum's over. It's not closed door at that point. But I still think sharing it with people, asking them to read it ahead of time, they'll kind of have to take it upon themselves to do so.
I shared it last night with,
Yeah.
I had affordable housing meeting last night, and I shared it with all of them too, so, but maybe one of the things we could do too is just like the goals and recommended actions. Maybe we can get those on those, the boards, like a bigger board, like already sort of
At each
prepared,
of the
so those are
stations.
like the key points that are,
Right.
at least people can sort of like hover around them a little bit, and next to that is a place to put all the sticky notes. So at least they can see the key points. I just see chaos right now, is what I'm
Really?
sensing is.
No, yeah, I do agree. I don't want, I want there to be a little bit more of a prompting to, and we talk about this in these meetings too, like almost kind of like prompting each other to like formulate our thoughts and not just be like, and I just use this as a joke, but like, I don't want 17 post-it notes of someone just sticking like dog park up there just for,
Wow.
No,
That was the wrong example.
I mean, no, I don't mean there's anything wrong with a dog park. I was just using that as an example of people just writing like.
I'm done with you, right?
But that is what people
If I
are gonna
could-
do. They're gonna do that too,
Well, if-
and that's
Yeah,
okay.
If I
I'm joking.
could jump
No, you're
in.
not.
No, I'm down with the dog park.
I just wanna say, for the record, I take offense. I want a dog park.
I think dog park's a good idea.
Oh,
I'm
so
for the-
we've got-
Oh.
Dropping words and just
Sorry.
walking out.
Luke wants to jump in. Luke, yes, sir.
Yeah, so what I was thinking of for the stations, to avoid just simply chaos, or hey, what do you think?
Drive by dog park.
We would have something for each group to respond to. Namely, what I was thinking was, the goals and actions are something that we can print on a big piece of paper and put up 48 by 36 inches, nice and big and bold print, so everybody can come by and read it. And then it's a couple of stapled packets of the chapter itself. And I think we can, before we break out into the groups, we can direct people, okay, we're gonna break out into groups. Your job is to go to the stations and, here's some sticky notes, whatever. Let us know what you feel about those goals and actions. Because that's the meat and the potatoes of each chapter, is the goals and actions. Those are the items. They're gonna get carried forward and ultimately implemented by various parties around town. So that's what we need your feedback on. The finite list that you're gonna be staring at, and it's gonna have, 70-point font, and is that. So I think we can give them pretty specific direction for the breakout station.
Instead of the Post-it notes, could we do something that's more of like, do you agree, yes or no, like levels 1 to 5, and maybe it's just like something that they fill out at the station for each of the goals and recommended actions, right? 'Cause is this more about what I'm looking for, like a dog park? Or, you know what I mean, it isn't really about that anymore,
So
right?
it's almost saying surveying.
Yeah, like, do you agree with this? What would have you liked to seem different? You know what I mean? because it isn't really about what wants, needs, and desires are at this point, right? Is it just sort of agreeing or disagreeing with this? Has someone also
Yes.
put like a horse park up there, you know what I mean, like they
It-
saw my
it's-
dog
it's-
park everywhere.
Yeah, no, this is, the first meeting was, hey, what should we focus on? This meeting is, here's the final draft. Here's your last chance. What do you think?
Yeah. Like, do you agree? Do you strongly disagree? Do you strongly agree? Am I making any sense? 'Cause
No,
yeah,
you
I
are,
feel
I
like
just,
I'm just trying to figure out how to implement it.
yeah, I just,
on each table has, we have
I
to take
wanna-
a survey.
I wanna know if we're, yeah, I think, I'm trying to figure out a way, I understand.
You already hurt my feelings.
I know.
Worse
I
than you ever could.
I
Just
understand.
say it.
No, I know. And I didn't mean, I was just trying to think of I meant that people coming by would just drive by Post-its with just like 2 words on it and, and not with like helping us help with our actions. I feel like I don't wanna throw our hard work, I don't know. I disagree with the idea of like us putting a rating scale out there for the public to. The public is going to have an opportunity by being part of committees or being part of, to help implement or not implement the master plan action items that we have developed.
And what are we asking of them?
So, yeah, I almost think the sticky note is a good idea, but also have maybe a couple of questions, that they're answering the questions with the sticky notes.
Maybe more.
I kind of like the survey, cause it doesn't mean we're gonna do anything with it, but like if 90% of the people are like, action 2, 3, 1, that is not a possibility and it's a no, then maybe we need to rethink whether or not it's in the master plan. Like, I don't know,
Is this the vision that you
is
saw?
this the vision? So
Yes or
we
no?
have goals and recommended actions at the end of, in every chapter, so what if we just like did a survey for each chapter for people to grab, like
Maybe
a
not
one-pager?
levels.
Yeah, because I think that people can see that in a few different ways. I can see that as like people seeing like, here's the housing table, right? Here's the table on housing, here's the table on like public services, public facilities. Housing's important to me, public facilities and services not as important to me. I'm gonna disagree with all that, cause I'm ranking it up, I feel like I'm ranking it up against
Oh,
this.
each table would have like its own.
I understand, but I'm gonna disagree with one and,
Yeah.
because I,
Oh, I,
Yeah.
I'm disagreeing with this because I agree with that, and I
oh, I
don't
see,
want,
yeah.
that's a way that I see people kind of skewing, like, the importance of action items, whereas, as
Yeah,
a town, we should be focused on all of these, at different levels of our government, at different levels of our committees, should all be working towards these different goals, it's to some extent. So I hear what you're saying, I just don't know if I want people to feel that they're weighing.
Well, sorry, if I could just jump in again. VHB's not in a position to relitigate the entire structure of the goals and actions. We're at the back end of our process and budget. So I think, certainly, I'm not saying we won't make changes to the draft. We will, our intention is to go to the meeting, get some qualitative feedback, and make sure that there's no red flags that we've missed. But in terms of the sort of structure of the goals and actions, I'd recommend that, to whoever made the point, you guys have done a lot of work and put a lot of thought into this, and there's some like nice, meaningful goals here. So I wonder, could the conversation with the community, yes, be about what do you think of these goals and actions? Qualitative, give us a Post-it note, tell us if there's anything that's a little off that might be adjusted or something like that. But maybe try to focus it on the future and implementation and thoughts about that. Like that could be a question. Scott, you said like ask them questions. Maybe one question could be, as the master plan coordination committee, we've worked with our consultant and we have the final draft plan, and here it is. We're presenting it to you tonight. You guys have given us such great feedback, and so have the stakeholders, and this plan represents the synthesis of all the feedback that we've gotten from you guys, and the online survey that we did at the beginning, et cetera. So a lot of work's been put into that, so maybe a question for them could be, A, do you have any initial thoughts on this? And B, we have to move this thing forward now that we're at the sort of, at the very last lap of the process of producing the plan. we're gonna focus on implementation, does anybody have any input on that?
I like that idea because it keeps it structured.
Okay. That's what we do then.
Agreed.
I like that. How else does everybody else feel? Yes? Jim and Martin, how do you guys feel about that?
I think that's a fine idea. The survey idea, I think we could, I don't wanna redo any of VHB's work, and, if you wanted to do the survey, it doesn't have to be at this meeting. It could be done online, anywhere, at any given time, it could be a different survey where you, if you just go through the goals and ask people what their priority is, I don't know, for 1 through 10, where's your top 3? Which ones you guys like best? I mean, if we're trying to figure out, I don't know if that's what we're trying to do. If we're trying to figure out what's most important to the community to be done first, that could be a way where we start rating the goals and putting them in such an order that makes sense for the community. But that doesn't have to be for this meeting. It could be what, yeah, so that's.
Okay. Jim?
What
Any
jumped
final
out
thoughts?
at me when I was reading through this is that there was a small cost, medium cost, high cost, and so forth, right? And a lot of people in this town don't want the taxes to get higher, okay? And I think when they read that, it says, if you add all this up, is it going to jack up the taxes or not, okay? Because somebody did ask me that, when they went through this, they says, hey, wait a second, you got items on here that's over $500,000, and you got some items on it, it's $5,000. Can you give me a approximation, a ballpark number, where it will stand if we agree to this plan, and the number is around here? And then the next question is, because of that amount, will it jack up our taxes? I didn't know how to answer this person.
Yeah, I think this question it's probably a little bit more out of scope than this agenda item here. It's just mostly in terms of how to, manage the public forum itself. That's definitely a conversation we can have on one of the additional items coming up, absolutely. So I know what you're talking about. I think we can talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I make one more comment, is that my wife got a hold of this thing, and.
Is this a feedback item? If it's a feedback item, let's wait for the next agenda item, just to focus. I just want to keep us focused for
Okay,
now, and then
all
we'll
right.
get to it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll bring it up later.
Excellent, perfect, thank you, sir. All right, did we have any more thoughts about on the side of what we're trying to achieve with the public forum? Luke? Looks like,
Well, I was wondering, so on the technical side, the folks from PAC TV, it sounds like you got the room equipped with cameras and all that. So should we assume that you guys are gonna take the lead on orchestrating the sort of hybrid format, Zoom, Teams, whatever type of call it is? If you guys have the capability of doing that, that'd be great, and we're sort of obviously happy to let you handle that portion of it. We're also happy to run a Teams meeting ourselves, but it sounds like if you already have a lot of the equipment in there, you would probably be better positioned than us for doing that. But what was your thinking?
Yeah, so we have a Zoom license for the town, and it's has webinar capability. So that was my initial thought. We would make a webinar, and I believe the count is like 500 attendees, and then we can make one of your representatives a co-host, and then they can
Cool.
control the breakout room for that parallel session while the tables are still going on. Well, then they're facilitating what's happening with the Zoom participants and, collecting all their questions and statements and stuff like that.
That sounds great. And then during the presentation piece, you'll have the 3 cameras and you can like sort of bounce back and forth between the different camera feeds and stuff?
That, and if your presentation also has like a PowerPoint component, we can incorporate that, so we'll,
Oh, yeah.
we'll see, that will be fed to the webinar attendees as well, too.
Yes, so that sounds excellent. So when we bring, I guess we'll plan to bring a laptop, sorry, not to bog the whole meeting down with the technical stuff, but we want to get it right. We'll bring a laptop with the presentation loaded up, and just, maybe we can handle it offline. Maybe just email me and let me know what you guys need from us to bring in order to make it work. It sounds like it should be pretty straightforward, but I just want to make sure that, that we bring what we need to let you do what you're gonna do.
Yes, sir, will do.
Okay, that sounds good. And then I'll also introduce you to our colleague who will be at home, and she can be the co-host for the breakout session.
Excellent.
Beautiful. Excellent.
And that will be nice too, because then everybody from home on the, like, will feel like they're in the room with us on the bigger,
For that initial presentation, they will. So
Yeah.
they're going to see what actually is being fed to, the Pembroke government channels and also to the Pembroke YouTube streaming meeting page as well, too.
So the people
Oh,
at
and-
home, say if there's 50 people on Zoom, how, is it gonna be like a queue, or is it he who yells the loudest gets heard first, or?
So the way the webinar works with attendees, it's typical. You think of a regular Zoom meeting. We call it the Brady Bunch view, where you've got all these different people. With a webinar, we're only feeding what we decide we're going to feed them. So we feed them the actual coverage of the meeting of the public forum, and then if they have. We typically use the raise hand function if they have a question, and whoever clicks on the raise hand function, they move to the top of the list. And then that way, VHB's liaison, they'll be able to, kind of organize, okay, well, so-and-so, and we can turn off the chat, we can turn on the chat. We'll probably want to keep the chat on for this. But,
it'd be great if you could maybe spend 2 minutes at the beginning of the meeting addressing the folks online and explaining the format and ground rules to them. I don't know if you're willing to do that, because that might help them to understand what they need to do.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and that could be a statement incorporated into the opening, before you go into the
Yeah.
presentation too, when we open
Right.
the public
That
forum.
makes sense.
And yeah,
And-
absolutely. So at the opening of the public forum, I think that's good, but I also think it's important to lay out the ground rules and the expectations before, so those who are thinking about attending remotely, they know ahead of time what the format and the expectation is gonna be. So, after you guys figure out everything behind the scenes, the technicals and the exact format and how you're gonna present the agenda, and what the link would be to access it at that time, if you can send that out, that way, we're gonna be communicating with the community and trying to get them involved remotely as well. If we can include those rules of engagement there as part of our communication, that will lay it right out for them before they even attend. I think that would be really helpful for them and for us.
and
So-
then,
Sounds
will
good.
you be
And-
ready to
and
be
by the way,
recording the Zoom?
Quickly, while we're on the topic of that opening presentation, we haven't talked yet about what that will include. So my initial thought on that is that we can spend whatever it is, call it 20 minutes. It's hard to present the comprehensive plan briefly because there's a lot going on there. But we can do our best to do that and show some of the nice graphics that our team made and the maps and stuff, and maybe some of those drone shots, and just to like walk through some of the more compelling visuals as a slide deck behind me, rather than like a bunch of bullet points and text and goals and yada yada. I'd love to just show some nice visuals from the the plan, and then present each one and really talk at a high level about what the sort of drivers of the master plan were, and what makes it uniquely Pembroke's plan, because there's 351 towns in Massachusetts, and they're all doing comp plans all the time, and you can get bogged down in, what makes, they all follow a formula to a degree. Maybe for that first 20 minutes, we'll talk about what's unique about Pembroke's comp plan and where you guys ended up. and maybe even focus on a few specific parts of town, the town center, the Route 139, Route 3 district, and some of those other pieces from the report. I don't know if that sounds good to you guys.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
sounds great.
With the recording of the Zoom, will you be able to save the chats as well? I know that that's a feature in the back end, because that would be nice if people are having chats in there that would have that for, the dictation of that.
Yeah, certainly.
Alright, thank you.
One thing I want to bring up before we end on this item is talking about the webinar link, the expectations, the format, kind of rolling all that out ahead of time as well. What do you think, Luke from VHB and PAC TV, is a reasonable timeline for that? I feel like on the master plan committee side, having that information at the ready, at bare minimum, a week, preferably 2 weeks, ahead of February 29th would be ideal. Is that a reasonable expectation, you guys think? To work out all the details behind the scenes and have that agenda, format, web link, et cetera, ready?
Yeah, definitely. So when we make the webinar for this public forum, we'll, build a registration page, so citizens who want to participate, they can go ahead, put their name, address information in, and then at that time, I'll build it into the invitation email that Zoom generates, laying down those ground rules, use the raise hand function when you want to, speak on something or chat, so we'll have all that set up. We'll probably do that first part of next week.
Okay, and Luke, what do you think about having everything tied up in a nice bow for us 2 weeks ahead of 2/29?
2 weeks ahead of 2/29.
Would that be next week?
Next
Thursday.
Is that enough
next
time?
week, right? And are you saying to get all of the slide deck ready and stuff like that, or just the format?
No, not so much that. I feel like that could be right whenever you need it, right up to the actual meeting itself.
Right,
I'm
okay.
thinking just
So,
the rules of
so
engagement.
to have all the,
Yes.
yeah. The technical stuff set up, and I don't see that as a problem, but, the gentleman from PACTV, sorry, what's your name?
Oh, Mark McKinley?
Oh, Mark. So I'm meeting with my team tomorrow to talk about the public meeting at 2 PM. Any chance you're available around then? I could rope you into the meeting and just we could get into the details then.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, so sorry, so I'll find your email and I'll forward you the invite. But let's just connect and figure it all out. But yes, in answer to your question, Steve, we can button that stuff up.
Okay, button it up, maybe a week from now, or do you do 1 week or 2 weeks from now? I'm just wondering when we can know to start to send out to people.
I think, well, maybe I'll defer to Mark on that, but I think by the end of next week shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
We'll try to work out as much as we can tomorrow when we catch up with Mark and his team. And, I think it should be fine.
Excellent. Okay. Any other thoughts from the committee? Any further discussion on this item? No? PAC TV, any other thoughts?
Just for clarification, essentially this thing would be an open presentation, and then it would just remain as a Zoom session, and then the library meeting itself would just essentially be all the breakout sessions. So it's primarily going from, I'm assuming the presentation be Zoom only, or in person, or hybrid?
Yeah,
Okay,
hybrid, yes.
okay. And then after that, it pretty much remain primarily Zoom for the remainder of this fall.
I'm envisioning, tell me what you guys think about it, but for example, hybrid for the presentation period, and then the breakout session where in person, everybody's doing their breakout session of the various sections and tables. There's an all-purpose breakout session happening in parallel that's separate from ours, they're not really cross-pollinating. And then my thought is, at the very end, kind of buttoning it up, maybe a quick overview of what the kind of inputs that people had at the different sessions to finish things up. What do you guys think about
And
that?
none of the people that are actually participating in the parallel breakout, Zoom breakout, or facilitating it are physically gonna be there. The person that's facilitating it is probably Luke's coworker Jen, who's probably gonna be at Jen's house, somewhere wherever that is, and she's gonna be facilitating that as a co-host with,
Luke, does that sound like it makes sense? Is there the ability at the end also, do you have an issue with, at the end, doing like a quick overview of what the,
Oh, yeah,
What would be an
sounds great.
overview?
I think, I like the idea of the breakout tables, all 7 of them. Somebody, one of us, between the committee and VHB, being assigned to each table and giving a 3-minute summary at the end, plus the people online with Jenny's crew. Jenny can give an update unless one of the people that are attending would prefer to do it, so that would be great too. I think that would give some nice closure to the night,
right,
rather than just petering out and people leave when they get bored or something. Yeah, let's do the wrap up if we can.
perfect. Okay,
And so 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock PM that night.
correct. All right. Anything else? Anyone? No? All right.
Sounds good.
So, I feel like we've buttoned that up pretty good, and we'll, end of next week, we'll wait to see what we get from you guys, we'll start to blast that out. We'll communicate with the community in the meantime and make sure everybody is reviewing and consuming the master plan and getting prepped to bring their input and feedback to the public forum. Luke, I mean, feel free, and I feel like PAC TV as well, we're gonna go down, we got a few more agenda items here, review of master plan update, feedback received, discuss outreach with community to review and generate ongoing feedback, and discuss avenues for implementation of master plan. You guys are free to hang out with us and watch if you like, although I will not force you.
We'll catch the replay.
Yeah,
I was gonna
very
say,
good.
you know how to find it.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank
Luke.
you,
Thank
guys.
you, PAC TV. Love you guys.
You too. Be well. Thank you, guys.
You as well. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right. All right, very good. So moving down the agenda, we've got review of master plan update and feedback received. So, Mr. Eng, Jim, if you like, I apologize for cutting you off early a little bit there. I just want to make sure we're staying with the structure of the agenda. I know you probably didn't get a copy right there. This is an amended one. But if you want to go first by starting with some of the feedback that you received from your wife and other folks, we could talk about it.
The very first thing is, she says to me, if I don't understand a term, who can answer my questions? For example, she saw chapter lands, she says, what's that? And, and then she says, in 2006, there was 1,017 acres, in 2023, it went down to 262. Does it explain why it went down? She couldn't find it, okay? So she was just trying to absorb it and understand some of the changes between 2006 and 2023, and she didn't have the information to, and quite frankly, I couldn't explain chapter lands to her. I went through the thing, and I think there was a footnote in here somewhere about chapter lands. Does anybody else have an issue with understanding chapter lands?
Some sort of a glossary.
Maybe that's a good idea, a glossary of terms. That's not a bad idea, actually. That might be helpful in like the appendices. I know the appendices
Yeah.
right now, there's the survey results, maybe having a glossary of terms for, that way it is more accessible to people. I think that's a great idea.
We should have asked Luke to stay a little longer.
Yeah.
We can send him an
Okay, we'll
email.
email him.
We can still, this is the other thing, is we can still send our feedback and inputs
Yeah.
to Luke. He said at any time leading up to the end, we can still send that stuff. I think that's an excellent idea, personally.
Yep.
Okay, I had a couple of residents come to my house because they were business people and they were giving me quotes on stuff. So I took surveys. I says, what do you like about the town? What do you don't like about the town? And a couple of them said to me, when I go to some of the beaches, they're trashy. Why do we allow out-of-towners to come and trash our beaches? And they says, there are beaches. And I says, yeah, I know there are beaches, but we just can't put like a fence and a gate and prevent people from going in. She goes, well, how about permits? And I think it's in here somewhere about
It is.
permitting.
Do you wanna?
We did talk about this, we're actually talking about this already, we have been previously.
Okay,
About creating a program with stickers for out-of-town residents and limiting how many they would actually
But somebody has to enforce it, you know?
Well, we have to create it first, so it's being worked on. But yes, what the hope is that it would fall under recreation, actually.
I mean, the discussion that's been ongoing that from what I understand is, I possibly in like 2025, I understand that there's a good possibility, post-community center being finalized, like that's kind of the big ticket item in town, that town beaches, waterfronts would move on, the oversight of waterfronts, would go to the recreation department.
Correct, yeah, so there is our, sorry, go ahead.
Resources, yeah, but, funding, staffing, resources need to be, you can't just say, hey, Lance, you're in charge of it now.
No.
It's, it comes down to funding and resources and providing the right, management plan to make sure that, that we take care of the things you're talking about. I think in-towners, make messes just as much as out-of-towners do. I don't prescribe to that theory of like just kinda, saying, oh, there must've been some crazy.
But I do think taking it out of just having that one volunteer committee and having oversight from the recreation department will help a lot.
Yeah,
It's
so,
gotta be-
it's in the, but yeah, it's being addressed. It was actually something that was on our goals and priorities for the select board. It's in the master plan as well.
Yeah.
Consolidation of boards and committees. It's gonna be under recreation. There's ideas around, how to do permitting, for example. And the idea also is that by consolidating it all under recreation, so instead of having volunteer committees, one for just town landing and then the other ponds are kind of a little bit off to the side, for example, there'll be better focus on the beaches and developing them and
We wanna
enhancing them in the
develop
future.
I mean, I know there's a lot
You
of
know?
CPC projects that are underway that will include, investing in new docks, I believe. So there's that. I think that, the other goal of the recreation department is to improve, recreation using them as a site to actually program. And when you have programming going on, then that increases supervision as well as, not just being a place that is just there for, improved visibility, improved supervision. And it's not just a place where people just go to do things. We have some actual programming, whether it be swim lessons, which I know have always taken place in Town Landing, but, an improved swim lesson program, more visibility of it. So I see good things in store of us, as far as, the waterfront.
Yeah, and I think as we continue to develop them and invest more in them with CPA funds and consolidating and streamlining the accountability and ownership over the ponds, as people see that the town is caring more about them, enhancing and developing them, people are gonna respect them more as well. So, yeah. Any other feedback or thoughts?
The issue I brought up about monies. The reason why I bring it up is throughout this report, it talks about available grants. And, we talked about having a grant writer. I don't know if that's a possibility or not, because there's oodles of grants that you can go after. Can it be done by an in-house person? Because, in my job, I hire a consultant to write grants for me, because I don't have the time to do it, and that's what they specialize in. So I hire a consultant like HDR or AECom or, one of the consultants.
Yeah, we have grant writers.
Yeah,
that
have
do that.
grant writers.
So one of the items in the master plan does go after the idea of getting a grant writer.
Mhm.
So, whether like we're definitely gonna do it next year or in 5 years, et cetera, I don't know quite yet. But it's something that is in the master plan for a grant writer. The other thing too is that Old Colony Planning Council is enhancing their abilities to help surrounding towns with grant writing. We do grant writing in-house. We don't have a dedicated grant writer, but that is something that's in the master plan. And Old Colony Planning Council can be another entity that we lean on to help us with that also, if it ends up being effective enough for us, so.
Yeah. The reason why I bring it up is there's money available out there. Let's do our best to grab some of it and help fund some of the items that we wanna get done. And that's where I jumped on the, what is the amount that is
You don't know, like the
going
dollar
to-
signs, like kind of like if $1 is like low, $2 signs is medium, $3 signs is like high. Is that what
Yeah.
you're referencing?
Yeah, it's referenced like that here, but the thing is, one person asked me, okay, if you add all that up and everybody agrees to go ahead and do it, what is the bottom line? How much will that increase our taxes?
So the one thing that they did, I know in the action tracker matrix in the master plan draft, the latest one that's out there, is that if it's got like $1 sign, like the lowest cost, that means it's under, I think it was under $50,000, which could be $0. It could be a policy change, it could be a bylaw change that doesn't really cost anything. It could be, $1,000, or it could be $49,000. So it's provided as a range because it's hard to say, especially if this is a 10 to 15-year document, what is this gonna cost? It might cost something now, but in 10 or 15 years, it's gonna cost something very different. So it's more relative, which I think is important to recognize,
Yeah.
that it's a relative cost, a low, medium, or high cost. And, if it's something that costs money, then it has to be paid for, naturally. So they're gonna be paid for, but at the end of the day, the budget is voted on by the town during
the town.
annual town meeting.
Okay.
So, if people care, they should attend.
Okay. I have one more question, then I'll let somebody else speak. When this thing gets done, it talks about, the planning board approving it? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so if the planning board approves it, it gets instituted, or does the selectmen, or does the town vote on this? Cause somebody asked me that question. If this thing gets finalized, does the public get a chance to say yay or nay?
So I could answer this, but I've just taken up
No.
too much time, so do you
No, the
wanna?
planning board actually approves it, and then it's complete. It does not go to town meeting.
Doesn't go to
It
town
does
meeting?
not go to town
Okay.
meeting, no.
It-
Well, I think the thought is that they've been able to participate in it all along.
Okay.
So why, once we're finished with it, would we then almost start over?
Okay, cause I bet you it'll be asked at this,
I'm sure.
yeah.
The
Yep,
good
planning
news is
board
we've
only.
already presented it to the planning board, just a week ago, right?
Right.
It's been a week. So they're aware of it and they're coming to the 29th. So they're
They
part
are?
of the
Okay,
process.
good.
Yes.
Just in general, I think that it's fair to remember that, at the end of the day, this is gonna be a document that the town owns. And it's a plan that the town owns. It's really up to the, implementation committee, and then those branches of town committees that are tied into these chapters, to these articles, to these, action items, to use this as like qualitative evidence of why this is an important, whether if you're going after $100,000 for a project, or, hiring a staff person. This is what's gonna help you move that project along. It's not about us saying, here, James, go do something with this, go make things happen. I think it's about the implementation committee, it's about the, those departments, those committees, beyond that, using this as a tool to help, garner support for, at town meeting, or at, wherever, to move projects along, whether it be a CPC project, or a town meeting article, or capital item. So it's really about building, this is a evidence that this is important to the town.
Okay. Who selects the implementation committee?
So that's gonna be, ultimately, it's gonna be up to the planning board. They own it, but we have some ideas on how to do that. We've got an agenda item to discuss avenues for implementation of master plan at the end here too. So we can talk about that more at the end, this kind of ideas. At the end of the day, even if we think that something's a good idea, the planning board may disagree. And that would be up to them, but we can certainly make our suggestions, and go from there. I think one thing, bringing back to what your point is, talking with you, Jim, about how it's going to be implemented, the one thing I will say is that action tracker matrix at the end of the master plan draft, if you look at it, there's a champion. There's also, it's identified as to, whether there's a bylaw or zoning change is required. So is it gonna require a town meeting, zoning change? And then also what the timeline for it is. If I remember correctly, I think it says short, medium, long term on what it would take to implement something. So at least before getting back and discussing that more at the implementation agenda item, I think that really helps guide the way as to what you're saying in terms of, hey, this document is here to kind of help provide some context as to what the whole conversation with the town was and how it went. And here's some better guidance so you can go forward, planning board or, recreation committee, and open space, conservation, select board, as opposed to kind of more kind of willy-nilly, you know, the political forces at play. Here's a path, maybe determine what the best priority is to go about it, but this would really lay out some things that the town had a discussion about and decided was really useful to look at. So,
Yeah, because some people may not agree with the selection.
yeah. They need to come to town meeting. They need to come to boards and committee meetings. They need to run for office.
Not everybody's
Exactly.
going to agree.
Yep, yep. Maybe let's go around a little bit. Martin, do you have any thoughts at this time, or we can go
Yeah.
around, and then if you want to come back?
There's a few charts that are in here that hope we can get it revised. They're not ordered in any way, and it's random. It should be from, like, for example, page 31, it talks about property tax rate. That's one that I just happened to come across. It just lists Pembroke as the first town. I think it should be ordered from highest tax rate to lowest. So that way, you know, if someone's looking at this, they're like, oh, where does Pembroke fall under their tax rate? You know, because a lot of people, I mean, I guess the consensus is Pembroke pays high taxes. But I can't tell what place we are compared to other towns by looking at a random chart like this. So that's, you know, if Luke can comb through and just make sure stuff is ordered from highest to lowest or whatever, you know, descending order, whatever it is, that would be easier to read.
I think that's an interesting point. I mean, right, what is the logic of the ordering in the
Yeah,
charts?
I was trying to figure out why it was written
Maybe
that way.
highlight
I
Pembroke
was
or
like,
something.
it's
and-
not alphabetical, it's not, I don't know why Pembroke is first.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Maybe at the beginning of each chart, state how they're sorted.
yeah.
And maybe go by some form of logic, such
Yeah,
as
I mean,
highest to
yeah,
lowest
it
dollar
just
or
looks
alphabetic.
random, yeah, but yeah, it'd be,
No, I think it's a good idea.
yeah,
Somebody, I mean, do you want, maybe you could just email Luke, do you have his,
sure, I can email Luke, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point too, and I think we all, as we're going through and talking about feedback and input and whatnot, to not forget that we can still continue to send Luke our inputs and our thoughts on different things, and if it makes sense, a lot of times I've noticed he'll just say, yep, we're gonna do that. Whereas if it's something that he could foresee some conflicts around, it would be, maybe it just needs to be addressed in a meeting. But we're probably gonna have 2 or 3 more master plan meetings before everything's done.
yeah, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that point for sure, so.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, I don't have any other items.
keep going this way. Scott, do you have any thoughts?
The goals and actions, I actually presented it to the HDC, and it was a lot of positive feedback on it, so looking pretty good.
I don't have anything new, except for that chart we discussed with the vacant land.
Yep.
that They were gonna repair.
Yeah, there's several areas on one of the chart, that shows vacant land where it's not vacant.
Yeah,
Little older chart or something, or?
I don't know why, it was odd. And you said your street wasn't on there.
My street
Right.
wasn't on there, and there's a bunch of vacant land around that, near where I live, that is not vacant, so,
But we already let Luke know, so.
yeah, he knows.
Okay. Sue?
I've got nothing new, so,
Mm.
I just end up sending it to him directly anyways.
All right. Sharon?
I had affordable housing last night, so I sent them the latest draft as well. So, I know that we at one point had the discussion, and I was just looking for that change when I had said, you know, our goal on affordable housing is really to be at 15% versus 10%, and I had a conversation about that a little bit, and putting, you know, the goal is being over 10%. They disagreed with me last night, and they wanted to say 15%. I personally think that, you know, over 10% makes more sense to me for certain reasons. I think putting 15% on there is like, now that's what the expectation is. Of course, that is what our goal is, but I think it sort of is whatever, but that's what the committee sort of decided last night.
They decided, like, they took a vote,
Yeah.
even, and
Well,
like a majority?
Yeah, well, it wasn't even like a actual one, it was, you
There was a
know,
clear consensus.
It was a consensus, yes, I lost. I'm okay with it though. Yeah, I mean, and again, I did it for different reasons, you know what I mean? Because I just think that I'm just used to in like contract, and we look at contract law a lot, you know, we're very familiar with saying up to this amount, you know what I mean? Because if I
Because
say,
it's a goal, not a.
yeah, I'm gonna give you $5,000, but if it only comes to 4, that means someone owes someone $1,000, right?
Right, so now if we put
So
15, are we
if-
now
now
setting
we're
an
at
expectation
15.
that we're
Yeah,
failing
yeah.
in
So
writing?
that's why I had said over 10%, which is over what the
Well,
state
couldn't we phrase it that way,
requires.
over 10%?
That's
with
what
a-
I asked
But
the
with a
change to
goal
be.
of 15?
Oh, I like
Something like that
Mm.
instead?
I like that. You're such a good at compromise. Look at you. No
Why,
wonder you're a
thank you.
select board member. I love that. You're gonna kill me after, right?
Yep.
I know. I couldn't even find it in here, 'cause the only part I can even see in here is, it says at least 10%,
But I think
so-
that way it's not set as an expectation.
Yeah, cause then I had said our goal is over that, but I
And-
like your thing, like over
Yeah.
10% with
with
a
goal
goal
of
of
15%.
15,
Yeah.
minimally of 15.
Minimum, yeah, minimum of 10%, but a goal of 15.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I like
So,
that, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of updating the wording, and, yeah, I think that wording is great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
I like
that,
idea.
is that something, Sharon, do you wanna email Luke from VHB and then?
Yeah, I can do that, cause I just wanna talk to Judy again too, and just, I wanted to make sure that she, you know, gave it a good once over as well. So I'll just make sure about that.
I think they'd be happy just to have that mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's to kind of color, there's a specific action item that says, what does it say right now? It says at least 10%?
That's what I think
Or,
it was
I don't
saying
remember.
over, the goal is over 10%.
Okay, and that's what you guys had the contention about?
It wasn't even contention, it was just, I told them what I had asked for a change. I mean, there were a couple of little things,
Okay.
like with Matakeesit Street and the 66 units and things like that, that like, those are what they are, they're concrete, they're not changing. I think that the only adjustment I had made without really talking to the Affordable Housing Committee as a whole, as their liaison, which I should be doing, I wanted to bring it to their attention that I had asked for that suggestion, and then that's when we had a conversation that they thought it should say 15. Andy Wandell is part of that committee as well, and he was very determined that it should say 15%, so. And I hate to say I don't care either way, I just don't wanna get us stuck where it's like, well, you said you were gonna do 15 and look, you
Right.
only got to 13.
Then it's an expectation instead
Yeah,
of a goal.
it's,
I
you
think
know.
it's different.
I actually completely agree with your logic on it, but then I think the idea of rewording it to state
Yeah.
that, hey, there's a target of 15%, a goal of minimum 10%,
Yeah.
bam, that makes everybody happy.
Yeah, and the state requirement is recommendation is 10%, so it's definitely 10%. You know, our goal is over 10% in hopes of 15%, whatever you said.
We get it.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, okay,
so that's my only input.
okay. Mr. Kuda?
I got more of a question though. So we have this large body of work with several chapters. Who's ultimately gonna decide how this gets prioritized? Is that the planning board or the implementation board or?
Ultimately, the authority is the planning board. There's some discussion on implementation. My personal vision, which might be different than other people's, but my thought is that, like what George said, is that this document is a guiding document based on all the research that we did, and that it's a suggestion, and that hopefully, and again, the authority from the implementation committee or the planning board will push on the idea that, hey, each area, each section, natural resources, which boards and committees are associated with that, which are looking at these concepts, should then look at those goals and priorities and decide for themselves which direction they should go, how they should prioritize those things.
Okay.
And are there available resources to do it? Is there available money to do it? What is the changing landscape of our budget? Maybe in a previous year, it was looking like something we could do, but then because of budgetary constraints, suddenly we can't. I think that flexibility is really important within the boards and committees and within the town as well. So I don't think it's something that we or even the planning board is gonna be like, this is how it has to be done, it has to be done in this time frame, blah, blah, blah. So much as, hey, here's a guiding document, make it part of your culture, roll it out, and you guys are the subject matter experts, you are the stakeholders, figure out how to get it done. But then a little bit of an expectation to keep pushing on that, to be like, hey, this is what we talked about, we need to get these done, how do we do it?
Okay.
Figure it out.
I think the master plan implementation committee, if there is such, if we do have such a committee, formed down the road, is the group that kind of holds each other accountable, right? That, you know, this is what the rec commission is doing, this is what we're working on as it pertains to, you know, our little piece of the pie here, you know, and then housing, what is housing working on? What is conservation working on? What action items are you focused on right now? And those, I mean, that's how I would see those meetings going, as, you know, holding each other, holding each other accountable and responsible as committees, as departments, that we're working on these goals that have been set forth by the town. But not necessarily like, you know, Steve or me or the town administrator or the town manager saying, hey, what's going on, master plan guy?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point of this whole committee is to have all the committees and boards work together, so there's more transparency and it's not each man for himself.
Yep.
That's why we changed the name, collaboration.
One of the things I've been getting a lot of feedback on this whole, what I've been hearing is, and we talked about it a little bit last night at our meeting, was that what I'm thinking is people are gonna think that there shouldn't be a committee of people that are just putting this, implementing this, that it should stay with potentially the planning board and somebody from each department or each,
Planning did talk about this a little when they went to
Yeah.
present, where they
committee, yeah.
seem to think
They don't think
possibly
it
they,
should be like the public at large making up this committee.
I don't really foresee it going that way
I don't
either.
yeah.
I'm wondering if, like, now that, I mean, we've kind of gone around, I don't know if, George, if you have
Sorry.
final, no, that's okay, I just kind of want to interject because I'm thinking that we'll get the final input and that we were going to discuss avenues for implementation of master plan last, but we can go right into it
I just
and
had,
discuss that more in depth.
I just had one thing, and I'm really glad you're here, cause, you know, from the affordable housing, cause maybe you can help kind of frame like where I'm going with this. So, last month we had our meeting, I kind of took some notes, as I mentioned, like, we kind of had some like conversations going in multiple directions, and I took some notes and I sent some suggestions as we recommended, like, and some of them were like typos, sent them to Julie, she took care of those. But then like I started looking at two, and I was like really kind of, and I get confused with kind of the concept of affordable housing but as it pertains to some of the way that we've worded some of our action items, and then I guess the one question I had, like, do the visions we have for our town center and for as a business center, an economic driver, match the demographics of the community we envision, and do our like housing goals, you know, when we're talking about like, you know, we need to fill our schools, you know, does what market? Families to fill our schools and buy larger houses, or aging in place seniors, you know, requiring smaller houses? Are we competing neighboring community? Do we have, obviously we have competing goals, right? You know, within a town, and how do we were talking about kind of wanting a 15%, you know, meeting a 15% threshold. So, what drives more money into our town as far as property tax revenue to help support some of the other goals that we have? You know, I'm just kind of concerned or confused that if some of our action items don't necessarily match the overarching vision that we have for the town. And how do you guys work with? Am I great? Like that's when I was reading through some of our goals, I'm like, hey, we want to have a town center that's got a bustling, you know, cool spot for bars and breweries and, you know, arts and culture, which I think is great. Like for me, you know, and I know that that's kind of maybe what active aging adults look for in their community as they get older. They want, you know, they kind of, you know, college towns tend to like be bustling because of that's where, you know, retirees are moving to, because of like all of those
Walkability.
the walkability, the culture, the dining. But is it because we need to push more for mixed use, you know, residential development, and how do we work on that? I mean, I don't know if we have some overarching visions, but that don't match necessarily our goals, and I'm interested to hear what everybody has to say, because I was kind of
So I think
lost
it's
in the weeds on that.
I think it's a very interesting point, personally. I think that there's definitely some merit to it. Like, I feel like a lot of the conversations that we have had in town, and even within the master plan, there's a lot of talk, and there's been a lot of developments, changes around supporting our aging population, right? And which that makes sense, we have to do that. There's even there's the 55-plus age-restricted housing developments that are starting, for example, and that's all well and good. The other good thing about that is it brings in more revenue while reducing our costs, because families bring costs. At the other side of that conversation, though, is the fact that we have significantly declining enrollment. And when we have significantly declining student enrollment with smaller families and an aging population, all these things, we get less and less Chapter 70 funding. And that Chapter 70 funding loss that we've experienced is a very serious problem right now for the schools. It's a big struggle. So, I mean, to what extent can we walk and chew gum at the same time? We can kind of take care of our, aging population, incentivize that, while at the same time trying to pull in more people. I think it's hard to be all things to all people.
They'll work together though.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So that's, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but that's
please,
a perfect segue.
please.
So that will work together. It will be to our advantage for the town of Pembroke for these 55-plus developments that we're doing. And the reason will be, we have such a shortage, as a lot of other states do, with inventory. And we're seeing it already with multiple offers. All right, we put something on the market, it's gone. The problem that we have right now is we're sort of stuck. The ketchup is in the bottle. We can't get it out, and it's because our seniors don't have any place to go. So if our seniors, and maybe not even seniors, our younger boomers, older boomers, Gen X, I think it is even too, like, what am I, I'm 55, the empty nesters, our age, right? Like, do we need the colonials anymore? Do we need these big houses? No, but do we have someplace to go? No. So these 55-plus developments are gonna be great, because I see what's happening at Pembroke, at the golf club, at the golf course. That would be great for, let's just say, myself and Sabrina's age, right? We don't have the kids, but then we wanna be maybe in that type of a community. Well, what that's gonna do is, it's gonna open up my 2,500 square foot house, it's gonna open up your house. That's gonna be able for people who have kids, and, that's the style of house, even though I can't really say that. Right, I can say it here, I guess. Someone who's looking for a 4-bedroom colonial would probably want the kids in the neighborhood, especially like where you are, like driving the bikes and everything.
Right.
So I feel like that will bring people into Pembroke as a community, especially with our new community center. I think that that's gonna be wonderful. I also think what's gonna happen is the people who have grown up in our town that can't afford to be in our town will now be able to stay here once we have those 55-pluses open. The one that's a rental, I in particular love that, because it will be great for our snowbirds. It will also be great just for people who, home ownership is not for everybody. And renting is sometimes for everybody. And I know right now, I'm dealing with a father that's a senior, and there aren't a lot of opportunities for seniors out there right now. Renting will be really good for them, and that's gonna open up housing that they're moving out of as well. So I think it's gonna really boost us and bring kids into the school system. Do you agree?
Yeah, I hope so. I think the only concern is it's a little bit too expensive for people to downsize in the 55-pluses that are going in.
Yeah, well, that will be a problem, but I think that it will happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I get, so,
The
and
rentals, we
I,
have 66 rentals.
Right, but what are the rental prices gonna be?
Well, they're gonna be 17 of them will be affordable minimally, but I mean, there's 66 of them there, so they'll be, they're only 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no rentals.
That's true, yeah.
We have no rentals.
so I guess my thank you, that, I'm just saying, is, if we kind of were to take a deep dive look into section 2, does it, like outlining like what you've just explained, does it do some of our action items really match like what the climate is?
So in section 2, establish affordable housing trust, the actual bylaw review committee is actually putting the structure together for the trust. So, it's falling right in line.
We reviewed that last night as well.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Maybe it
to
was
George's point, maybe that's something, especially George, if you wanna take on, since this is something that I think it's a valid thing to think about and be concerned with. I'm gonna look too. But maybe it makes sense to look back through all of our goals and priorities with that in mind and think, hey, are there any of these that are in direct conflict with what we're trying to achieve? And just highlight them, and then maybe we can mention them as something, whether it's to strike them, be like, you know what, actually, we don't want this. or maybe we can modify it a little bit to make it a little bit more aligned with what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So that's probably something, if you wanna
Yeah.
take that on in particular, I'll join you with it, I'll also do it, but that sounds like something that you've really focused on, that makes
Yeah,
sense
it
to
just felt like
jump
section
into.
two, and like I said, I know, like you said, I understand that, like, are we trying to walk, like, you know, walk and chew gum at the same time, and how does that work? And you kind of explained a little bit to me, and I appreciate that, and I was like reading it on my own, untrained, I was like, are we talking about two totally separate things here, and how do we do both?
Yeah, and the other thing that affordable housing that we've been working on is trying to come up with a friendly 40B, so it's a little bit easier to go through that process. And I think that that would be good, because I think that that's where a stalling point is a little bit, is once, you know, the contractors and the developers, they get to the point of, you know, going to zoning, going to planning, going to conservation, going to all these different, you know, levels. It makes it so expensive to, by the way, that whole process, and bring in engineers and bring in attorneys. So sort of having an outline of, okay, this is what planning has agreed would be okay, zoning, conservation, and sort of making it easier, so we can have a package and say, all right, developers, this is what we would consider a 40B, just to make the process easier for
Yeah.
you.
Because I imagine you deal with a lot of people, I feel like, you know, speaking anecdotally, of course, but like of the, the other families, like we have 2 kids, 2 parents, we've got, our friends all have kids in Pembroke schools. We all like Pembroke, we wanna live in Pembroke, we may have bought a house 10 years ago that we outgrown, like, here, like, there's no way to kind of, the inventory isn't there. The price point is such a huge jump, right, of moving from like a 1,600 square foot house on an acre to maybe a 2,000, 2,200 square foot, that, the jump, the jump is huge. So how do we build more inventory that meets, that fills that gap, where I feel that's where the housing gap is, maybe not as well as the.
And it's really hard to do right now, because the cost to do a development right now, not just Pembroke, but statewide, I would say, it's just astronomical, how much more it costs these developers to build. To even just put the road in, the engineering, the cost per lot is just so much more. That's why 40B developments work, because now you don't have the requirement. In Pembroke, we have a 1 acre requirement, and it's not just a 1 acre, I mean, we can't even have pork chop lots in our town. So, some of those things I think eventually are gonna have to change, and we've talked about this a lot of times too, is with the accessory dwelling units as well. And maybe that's something that would help with some of the housing things too.
Do we have, in the master plan, it's talking about inviting or coming up with, a template or a system to make it easier to invite friendly 40Bs in, which I think is a great idea, and something I've been talking about for a while too. Do we have an action item in the master plan that mentions that?
I know we've talked about it in here, but I don't recall seeing it.
I definitely feel like we should have a kind of just a standard format or some kind of template, or at least some action item that talks about.
At least creating it and finalizing it.
Yeah.
Because we're in the talking processes about it.
Yeah, we should definitely be reaching out and inviting friendly 40Bs that do exactly accommodate what we want to do, make it easy for them, and then there's incentives on their end as well. And it can satisfy exactly what you're talking about, which is valid, 100%, kind of to fill that gap. So I feel like that could be a really
And I
important
think
action item.
one of the things we've talked about in this forum, and I don't wanna I know we wanna move on, and just real quick, is that in Stefan's talking about too, like, just being more forthcoming about having about identifying those plots of land, the town liquidating it, having, whether it be the plan, where be ready to go with our, requests for proposals to get, to kinda get the ball rolling a little bit faster. I don't know if it's a zoning thing or a bylaw thing, or maybe what it is, what you're saying, it's like a more of
I
a.
would say that with the town, and Sabrina would know better of this too, and even the select board members here too, is, I would think that the lots that we have in town are sort of like one here, one there, so, you know what I mean, I don't know that that's gonna suffice in trying to bring in more housing, like, if you're sporadically doing 1 or 2 here. I know that Habitat for Humanity has also come before affordable housing, so they have asked us about a couple of the lots in town that they've highlighted that they would like, to bring in, a Habitat for Humanity type type thing, but, I mean, there's no big parcels, right?
Not without restrictions.
Yeah.
The treasure collector was in front of the select board last night talking.
Oh, really? Oh, good, that was good timing.
But the 3 tax possession properties she has are less than 1/10 of an acre each.
Yeah,
And are only desirable or attractive to their abutters, you
Yeah.
know?
yeah,
So, land that used to be held in the name of the select board, right, which is
Yeah.
now in the tax possession inventory, there isn't any. You know, it's turned over very quickly for sale, to put it back on the tax rolls, right?
Yeah.
Get it out there, get more people invested, so that there's an opportunity. The large tracts of land you see held in the name of town of Pembroke or in the names of conservation or DPW,
yeah,
and those are highly restricted.
and water, right?
DPW,
Yeah, so,
because we either have a mind to more, you know, surface wells, groundwater, deep wells, growing with our expanding infrastructure. And then conservation, forget that it's restricted by Article 92.
well, even all the land near my house, that's all federally protected too, right? And we
Correct.
sold all that too.
Yep.
So I think that, I know Stefano's talked about that a lot, like selling, you know what I mean, the land and stuff, but I just don't think that that's gonna be enough to make an impact of, and like you said, it's to the abutters maybe, but,
Right. I mean, you're sitting on 660 Washington, you've got a couple of parcels here and there, but no, not enough.
and it is difficult too, because I know that there are a couple of large tracts, and I know you had one.
Yeah.
And honestly, one that Sue had listed was difficult based on the fact that there's a house already on it. So you can't, the way that a road would have to go in or a driveway would have to go in is just very restrictive of what the town would allow. So some of that is gonna have to lighten up perhaps. in
It's like
order
a
to-
3-foot thing.
On,
Yeah.
on
Oldham?
Oldham,
Yeah.
yeah, and then there's another one on West Elm Street.
And your climate for public support of government projects. When you think about the idea of going to town meeting and saying, we would like to buy land, and we would like to convert it. The first question people are gonna have is, you're the town, this is your skill set, this is what you should be doing.
And I will stand up and say no.
I listen to Stefan, I respect it, I have enjoyed the conversations, they're all very,
Yeah.
very good. Implementation, practically, may struggle here at this time. Who knows what the future holds?
Yeah.
I think people's opinion of government is getting better. So we'll see.
From your lips
Oldham
to
Street's
God's
still
ears.
So we'll see.
It's not listed, no, because it's, you know,
It just made it too complicated.
it was way too complicated.
And that is part of the thing, like I had it even brought up, like I know with, you know, Bristol and with Shepherd's, you know, the whole thing that what he has to do in order to get that to be a mixed use now, right? Everybody I talk to says, oh, I would love to have another restaurant in town, I'd love to have this in town, like, and in order for him to do what he wanted to do, it's like he had to go through the process of engineering, probably to take a parcel out. So now it isn't mixed use, now this one piece is commercial and this piece is residential. But when they were together, it didn't work because it was mixed use, and
Right.
that's not where you can have mixed use. Like, that type of stuff to me is silly, like, there should be some,
Yeah.
you know, and
It's
here's
crazy
the thing is when people come before any of the boards, and believe me, like I sat on zoning and I said this often, is a lot of times people are just doing things, they're asking for forgiveness rather than approval, because approval is just too damn hard. And that's what you don't want that reputation in a town,
Yeah.
because then, you know what, developers are like, fine, I'll go to Duxbury, I'll go to Marshfield, I'm gonna go to Hanson, we're seeing so much in Hanson, Carver, right?
Very true.
Okay.
Sorry, did I just go off on a tangent?
No.
You asked.
No,
I
You
asked.
You answered the
No.
question, he's like, I'm sorry, I did.
No, 100% no, I appreciate it, and I think like if anybody were to, if you kind of took a look at like section 2, and then like counterbalance that with like section 3.3, like that's where I find like the you know, the kind of where we're crossing, where I can't, you know, add 2 + 2 and get 4 out of that, so that's where I have a hard time.
No, I think it's valid, I think it's excellent discussion, absolutely. George, if you wanna go in, especially you're kind of
I'll
identifying.
be happy to send, I'll kind of point
Yeah.
out where like we can, I don't know how, I'm not a Mr. like open meeting, like I prefer like us kind of, because all the information is so online and, you know, we want to have those discussions kind of, but So what can we share and what can't we share? 'Cause
As
I would-
long as whatever you send, you don't send it to more than you don't send it to a quorum, which would be a majority of people. So as long as you send it to 5 or less people. If you wanna send it to a select group, for example, Sharon would probably be one, for example, she's been pretty engaged in the conversation, folks, then up to you, I would say. As long as that thread stays within that group, then it would be fine, it can be productive. 4 people or 11, so a quorum would be 6.
What would that include him?
So,
Yeah,
so
so
you
four
would send it
other
to
people.
4, yeah, you send it to 4.
Do you want us
A
to
total
send it
of
to
5
Sharon and you and Julie and just so we have a record of
Well,
it?
Julie wouldn't be part of the quorum,
Right.
you can add her no matter
Right.
what. But yeah, you can send it to Sharon, myself, Tracy, and then Sue, or if anybody
I'd
else.
say that Sue would be a good one too, just
Mhm.
because with the background with real
Yeah.
estate as well. And she sees different things, and she had a really good example of it not working. And again, I wanna state too, though, I do think that the town is doing a better job at trying to make it easier. You know what I mean? I haven't heard like people saying, oh, it's not home before, like zoning anymore.
Right. So I'm saying that, like, you're right, and maybe that's a whole, like, we need to crawl before we walk. Maybe there's another action item that needs to be, that we're missing, a step that we're missing, that would allow us to do the things that we wanna do, but we need to kinda, whether it be a zoning, a bylaw change, or zoning change, or
I think
making-
it's collaboration between the boards.
I wrote cross-departmental approach,
Yes,
Well, there you go.
so.
we absolutely.
I'll
need
share
that.
with you guys what I kinda put, my original thoughts, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, any other thoughts?
Steve,
quickly?
if a developer picked this up and they saw vacancy by land use and they see potential developer land, it's very small. So that would scare them to come here and try to develop something, okay? I think, because potential developer land for residential, 34 acres. Commercial, 2. Industrial, 0. I mean, you know, what,
Yeah, that's-
what developer would wanna,
That's current state, you know, so some of the discussion, some of the action items are about attracting more development, making it more attractive for people to wanna come and develop, having friendly 40Bs, things like that. So it's definitely a direction we wanna go in, cause I mean, your point is well taken, you know? The situation is not ideal, we wanna make it more ideal. If you have any additional solutions or ideas, definitely send it as input, absolutely.
yeah.
Are you talking about changing the land use? Is that what you're saying or suggesting?
That's what it sounds like. Well, we're talking about like there's some zoning bylaw, possible changes that can be made around that, and those would have to go before town meeting, of course. 40Bs, friendly 40Bs would be within existing zoning restrictions, so those wouldn't have to be necessarily changed.
Because
but-
it sounded like Jim was asking, you know, how do we increase these numbers? So, the way I can see it is if change the zoning, right?
So if there needs to be a zoning change.
So if you're gonna change the zoning, I guess my question would be, you know, who decides that? And then where do we want it, right? Because you don't want to live right next to a Lowe's or a Home Depot, right? So there's some strategy there for master planning on deciding, you know, how this lays out and who's next to what.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are some action items that talk about some zoning changes, loosening some zoning changes, I know in the center of town at least.
Yeah.
I think it's mirrored in a bunch of different chapters.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be planning, and then that would be town meeting to approve it. But yeah. Any other feedback?
Where were you reading on that too, Jim? Cause I'm reading here vacant land and developable potential, and it says based on town assessors data, 30% of 3,960 acres of the town are classified as vacant. So,
On page 9,
Table
the chart on page 9, table 1.2.
I'm looking at an old one, so.
Yeah.
I just have to go one too, yeah.
What is that? That does look like it, but I think he's looking at this.
So it says vacancy by land use, that's the title of it?
Yeah. So how many acres did you say? So residential,
It says potential developable land,
Oh.
34, but on top of that, it says developable land, 202. So does the planning board or rezoning have to make the developable land developable?
Yeah, so that's what so I think it's like 711 acres are potentially residential.
Yeah.
And then 202 acres are developable. And then the 34 acres is maybe,
And the,
because there might be a conservation issue, or there might be, like, you might need a variance or something like that.
Okay,
Or maybe a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
okay.
That's what I think it means by the 34 acres.
So developable land 202, that means that 202 acres, you could have additional 200 houses built in Pembroke, right?
Potentially.
Is that?
yeah.
Mhm.
Unless you change the acreage to half, then you can build double that.
Oh,
I don't really see that happening.
I don't see that happening either. Especially if you have a septic system, you need the land for.
Yeah.
You can do
septic.
it on a half acre, you can do it on
Yeah, but-
2.4 if you wanted to, but,
Yeah.
and then there's 711 of just residential. I mean, this is vacancy by land use.
Wait, what did you say?
So it's-
There's opportunities to develop.
So is 711 the whole total?
That's the total.
Yeah. And
So
then
that may
there's
be confusing there.
473.
Yeah, and then
It
other,
adds up to-
3,100.
Yeah.
Adds upwards.
Yeah, so half of
That-
it is undeveloped.
We're getting rid of the
I
7.
don't know if that's total, I think that's definitely residential, and then it's just,
Yeah, I think that.
and then it's just not marked as either, it's just developable, it
Yeah.
doesn't say.
Because when I did the math, it came out to 1,188, when I did the math on the other one, so 3,960 acres, 30% of that, according to the assessor, is is vacant land, so that would be 1,188,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right?
You have different numbers than we do on this, in the chart? I don't see 1,000.
She just did the math from
I just did
the
the math from
previous
this
page.
previous page.
Oh. But the top bold number is the total
Total.
of the breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't add the 711 to the
No.
bottom three.
So,
Yeah.
so
Oh, okay.
11, and then 202, and then
Yeah.
400,
So
74.
711,
74.
yeah, out of that.
34,201, that's getting
Equals
us
the
711, so the residential land.
Oh,
This
okay,
is
got it.
total, that's
That's
the one I
total,
gave is
okay.
total.
Got it, all right.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this? All right. All right, we're just gonna move, I'm gonna actually skip ahead a little bit and go down to discuss avenues for implementation of master plan. I feel like, we've talked about this a lot. I don't know how much more, it's ultimately not going to be up to us, but one idea that I thought was very good that came up, yeah, actually, Andy Wandell, when we presented to the planning board, suggested that maybe we consider the advisory committee is actually the one to be the implementation committee. I personally thought that that was an excellent idea, because we don't have to create another board or committee, which we have enough, we're trying to consolidate, that, especially one that wouldn't really have a whole lot of teeth to it in the first place. On top of that, the advisory committee, I feel like we don't really leverage enough. We could use it so much more, I feel like they have so much more capacity to help. And this is kind of right in their wheelhouse, in a sense too. They could start to advise, they would kind of have to be charged by the planning board and probably the select boards both to take on the master plan. And those are my thoughts on it so far, but I'd be curious what other people think about that and other ideas.
I think it's a perfect idea.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It's an advisory document.
I think it's a great idea.
I do too, I like that idea.
Oh, like the idea of
I'm
creating a
sorry.
committee.
How many,
Who's on the
yeah,
advisory?
who's on the advisory board and how many members are there on the advisory board?
You want a list of the members
No, how many?
specifically?
No, so there is a
Oh.
current advisory board.
God, I don't remember how many. I can look it up for
Now?
you. Yeah.
Oh,
It's at least 7, if I
Yeah,
remember
okay.
correctly.
and it comes, and they're from different,
The
Sections.
advisory committee is appointed by the select board.
Right, they're not members of other committees that are placed on advisory, if that's what you're
Right.
asking.
okay. So you have to run for it, is that what that is?
No, you're appointed, actually.
Just appointed.
There's actually an open space, so if you're at all interested, we have a spot that just opened up.
Like, you looked right at me and you knew I'm gonna tell you to do it.
I don't have time to do it, sorry. Yeah, I was- I
Didn't
was-
you,
I was-
didn't you think about running for planning last time?
Yeah, I did.
It's
I
9.
started it too.
9.
It's
Okay.
9.
My wife called me crazy and said,
It doesn't have
Advisory
data
would be
going.
good, you'd be good at that.
So there's 9
Very
members on the
level-headed.
advisory.
Yep.
And I personally think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Makes such sense.
It really does, and I feel like they can do more. I feel like we don't ask enough of them.
And again, if
It'd
we
be
don't
more
use
engaging.
advisory, then what would we use? So we would create a whole new committee, and then who would we pull? I don't see all of us just jumping on that committee, and I don't think we should.
Yep.
No.
So.
Does an advisory meet when they're doing budgets and stuff like that? They're sort of already familiar with all the different boards and committees anyways, right? So don't they
I'd
sort
say
of?
yes.
Yeah, right, they sort of are in conversations with them anyways, so I think that that's part of the conversation should be with each one of the boards,
Yeah.
to see who's,
Right,
You
and I
know.
mean, it's not set in stone, it's
yeah,
just something
I think that
they
that's a
talk
great
about.
idea.
Yeah, I do too.
Does George, Curtis, what do you guys think? Well, I figure we'll go around, get final thoughts on this, because over here we're like, we think that's an excellent
Yeah.
idea, but
I'm not familiar with
We're
them.
already there.
I'm not familiar with, I'm not familiar, not necessarily like, I don't know, I couldn't tell you who, I don't know who they are. So there's not a member of the advisory committee necessarily on this committee, so I guess in my vision of how the implementation committee would, be after we have, passed it on, whether it be a couple of us, it would be people that would involve individuals from various committees or departments that have skin in the game to help get some of this stuff to move forward in fruition. That being said, I don't know what the advisory committee's overarching role is, what their projects that they are currently working on, so I have more questions than I have answers right now, but my vision is more people that have.
stakeholder based.
Thank you, yeah.
What was that, Steve?
Stakeholder based?
Oh, stakeholder base.
Um,
Kind of the same vein, I'm really familiar with what they do or what their capacity is, so learning more about it tonight than I probably have ever heard before, so.
That's all right. And Jim and Martin, what do you guys think?
I'm wondering if this advisory board has a background, either planning, technical, or something like that, that could enhance their decision-making or advisory to come up with, a game plan. And to understand who they are and what the capability are, I would agree to it or not agree to it.
So you're kind of same boat as George, it sounds like, where you have more questions
Yeah.
than.
Wait, do we actually get a vote? Is this what this is? So
We
does
don't
this happen?
necessarily have to vote. I mean,
Oh.
this is more just an open discussion
Oh.
as to thoughts around implementation.
I'm okay with the suggestion. I'm open to hear what the advisory board can do, and sounds like, other people are more aware than we are, but,
I would say, I mean,
you know, if
being-
that's the recommendation, I don't see why there's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, fairly familiar with advisory, I think a number of us on this side are, and we feel pretty strong, I would say strongly that advisory would be good. I mean,
I like the idea of eliminating like a whole nother group that you need to, do, if there's already a group that kind of already does similar things.
Yeah.
that we're not fully leveraging.
They're not the ones implementing, they're the ones making sure it's implemented.
They're advising.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so making sure, so they're sort of in charge of, that,
Like-
well, if
Like
it ended
like
up being
pushing the
them.
issue to a different,
Yeah,
planning
how-
board, or whatever it needs to do to pass.
Inspecting what
Yeah.
we are expecting from the master plan.
So would they
With each
be,
one of the town departments.
would their role also include like getting, like if you're trying to implement one of the goals, would their role be like, moving it to the next step? For example, you're trying to get a cost estimate for the item, and then you have to get it to be passed by, I don't know, conservation, whatever it is, right? Would that be part of their role?
I would think each
I don't
department
really
would.
foresee that at all. I mean, I guess that would be up to planning. Advisory's main purpose is to advise the town, advise town meeting.
Okay, so then I guess my question is, who would be the champion to keep moving it to the next step?
I still say that would be stakeholder.
Yeah,
Because having advisory take ownership of it in some way doesn't take it away from the stakeholders having.
Okay.
The one, yeah, I mean, I would add to that the idea that, advisory board, they can be charged with it to an extent to advise around researching the issues and maybe kind of having that collaboration with different committees, but at the end of the day, this is one thing that Stefan said that I agree with very strongly, which is that the the master plan has to be part of the culture of our government, it has to be part of the culture of the different boards and committees. It can't be something that goes up on a shelf. It has to be something that the select board, I feel like, reminds maybe the advisory committee. The planning board ultimately is the one with the authority behind the document. And it's gotta come at and attacked from multiple angles. And not forgotten
My
about.
understanding of how an advisory board functions is kind of like, is it legal? You know, we approve this article, right? We approve this article at town meeting, the advisory board supports it, is it legal? Can we afford it? You know, I mean, I think that's kind of, are these fiscally responsible decisions
Do
for the town?
recommend it. They recommend or not recommend a warrant, yes.
Yeah, right,
So
so,
if they're taking ownership of this document, they're kind of considering it. I would say that that makes more sense if it was going to be something we wanted to be part of the culture of the town completely, it should go to advisory. Because their prime purpose is to advise the town on warrant items.
What if the advisory board advises a item to do, but the town doesn't like it?
Well, then the town votes it down at town meeting,
Oh, I see, okay.
right?
All right.
So they can not recommend something, that's their prerogative. And then even, so they could recommend something that goes to town meeting and we still vote it down. It would be up to the town in general. They can't force it is what I'm saying. It's not a checklist, a forced checklist.
So the advisory board, or, yeah, who, well, I guess maybe I should take a step back. Who would maintain this chart in the back? And there's a chart here in the back that kind of, VHU kind of put together like action items, implementation, partners, cost estimate, time frame, priorities. It's kind of, it's a nice organized, chart, it's got X's on there. And like, but, trying to give an example of like land use and a goal, it's page 141. It's the beginning of, essentially like an action item list and potential budget, right, of items.
And it's still planning. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still planning's document.
It's ultimately, it is planning's document. They're the ones with final authority on it. So it is their document, yeah.
Also, they have to maintain that.
At the end of the day, they own the document. And at the end of the day, the prime owner of the master plan is the planning board. And I would expect that the planning board would be the ones that really are the champions of making sure it becomes part of the culture of the government and the different boards and committees. I personally think that the select board can help with that too, even though we don't own it. And then advisory can be a kind of like, really a secondary or tertiary entity that takes it on in a sense
so
as well.
why does planning kick it over to advisory then?
I don't think they're giving it to them. I think that they're, and again, this is nothing that was decided, it was just something they just
No,
talked
I
about at
got
their
you, yeah.
last meeting. Somebody who keeps their eyes on it a little bit closer, I guess, instead of having the implementation committee.
Right, like if we're gonna have an implementation committee at all, then why form another committee with less teeth, with, kind of pick and choose from people and whatnot, as opposed to one you already have, you can leverage more, that can take on that
Like, what
same
would
role,
an
and that makes sense to me.
Sorry, what would an implementation committee do? What would they
Well,
literally do?
to your point about establishing the culture, establishing the culture, this becoming a town government, culture, that we are eliminating silos, that we understand that a lot of these action items require, not to feel like a cross-departmental approach, right? It requires departments, committees working together to accomplish goals and to answer questions and have those tough
So you
conversations.
think it's more collaborative that way?
It's in the master plan collaborative committee, yeah, I do,
I mean,
yeah.
you have the implementation committee, you think
Yeah,
it's more
well,
collaborative?
I think the effort to implement is gonna require collaboration between departments and committees.
I think that can still happen.
To support each other's, so, yeah, so I do see it, I still envision
Yours is just filled
it
out.
being a stakeholder-based, committee.
And
But
so
That-
maybe we have questions for planning,
Yours is
how would
just
they
filled out
see
more.
advisory voting?
Dollar
Job.
signs and
Yeah.
I think more information
That's the
on
valid-
that.
that's the next
Committee
question.
of every chair,
I think it's, in essence, it's up to the planning committee, so,
Yeah.
planning board.
but doesn't that would sort of make sense too, if it was every chair, then it's sort of rotating and it's sort
Right.
of, you know what I mean?
What do you mean by every chair?
So whoever's chairperson on their committee at that time, right,
No,
so
I don't.
whoever's, who's chair
Clearly,
in
you have the
historical?
latest.
It's a co-chair between Miles and, Steve.
Yeah, so, you know what I mean, at
Yeah.
least they're, I don't know, it's up to planning, I don't think that we
I mean, that's
really
an,
have a say.
that's
Yeah.
that's an interesting, that's an interesting point. I mean, if you charge the chair, then you at least, the chair has to be charged with familiarizing with the master plan document, or at least the parts that are relevant to them.
That's a really good idea, cause now you're forcing it to be, communication.
Part of,
And
well,
I'm-
and it's mutual communication, and I think a standing operating procedure,
I'd love to see how other towns.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Susan
Chairs
is the
as
school
well.
committee's delegate here, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm the recreation commission's delegate. I mean, you know,
So
we
it'd be
all,
kinda
I mean,
like
some of us are
CPC.
at large, some of us aren't.
So it'd be like CPC in a way, but not the chairs. Well, it would be the
Right,
chairs
I
instead
think
of
that, I
the
think that committees assign delegates to,
and the nice thing about it being a chair is chair rotates, right? So it chair rotate every year, if they choose to.
If they choose.
If they choose to. So that also brings in other viewpoints and other ideas, but still in your same vein of, you know, recreation or historical, school.
It could be a paper committee, you know, in terms of, hey, there's an implementation committee, there's a master plan implementation committee. They don't ever actually meet, but every chair of every board and committee is on that committee as like a paper committee.
I think they should meet one quarter minimum, don't you think, or twice a year, or something, once a year?
Maybe a bare minimum expectation of that, yeah,
Every
or
other
once a year, and obviously we can't tell planning or tell the boards to do that. Maybe the select board can help, but yeah, I think it's a very interesting idea, and that maybe they meet twice a year.
Well, and I think too, the thing that's important is anybody who's on planning, anyone who's on zoning, anyone who's on conservation, even though no one from conservation was here, but each one of those departments knows what's going on in their department the best. And I think that they'll be able to sort of concentrate and say, hey, this might be one of the goals, but right now we're sort of focused on this, and that's why we can't do that. I don't think the advisory board is gonna know the inside conversations of what's going on in each individual board.
I agree with that. I think that if we want to see, you know, all of us are on this committee and all of us worked hard to provide our input, and we all wanna see, we've all offered action items, that we wanna see things move forward, right? We know that, you know, it may move at a snail's pace, it may move a little bit faster, it may cost a little bit more, there's a lot more, you know, we have questions, the town may have questions, but I think if you hand this off to the unknown and you know, the advisory board that maybe not fully vested in what we have produced here, that you are just slowing the process down, right?
Adding a little dust.
You're adding
on the
layer,
shelf, right?
you're just adding
Yeah,
another
yeah.
layer.
The other thing too is maybe it is important, I know we're doing this for the public, but I mean, one of the things that came up in our first public forum was, and with us, it's come up often, is the communication between, you know, the departments and the committees and things like that, and I have seen it firsthand, being on zoning, being on conservation. Maybe it should be something where we can have like a forum with them. I mean, they're in here, like a forum with the people who are on these committees.
You're talking about master plan, have a forum, or something you're talking
Yeah,
about?
like master plan, have a forum with like, hey, we're gonna be over at the library, and it would be nice for them to see it. I mean, no one from conservation has seen any of these things. You know what I mean? Do you know, how are they supposed to know? We're just gonna hand it to them and say, okay, this is what we came up with? And okay, maybe that is what it is, but hey, this is what we came up with.
Right.
Hey, this is what we came up with, like, just so you're aware of what we came up with. And this, you know, how are you on a board if you don't know what the expectations of the board are?
Oh, right, I know.
Do you know what I mean? I think that that's what makes it hard. Honestly, you need more of those Roberts books. You know, what are those called?
Robert's
The
rules.
rules.
Robert's Rules of
Those
Order.
floating around.
We work on town meeting time now.
Yeah, no,
Thank you,
first,
Steve Dodge.
I think, especially as we're kind of talking through everything, we're talking about, hey, advisory seemed like a better idea than like a newly formed implementation committee, but then talking through that more, the idea that you don't really have the best stakeholders there. And, you know, maybe we could leverage them, but maybe we can't really leverage them as effectively as we need. So I really like the idea personally of having the chair from each of these boards and committees be part of this master plan implementation committee or master plan collaboration committee. It's now made up of all the chairs. They meet twice a year. The expectation of the chair of each board and committee, and I think it is a fair expectation, is you need to be familiar with the master plan.
That's
And
what-
maybe not
Right.
just your silo, but everything, so that way it's not an unreasonable document to read and expect if you're the chair of a board or committee of a town.
You can hand it to them with the open meeting law.
And then when they meet, yeah, exactly. And then when they meet, a couple times a year, hey, how's our progress look for these different priorities, these goals and action items? How can we push things forward? And then it becomes part of the culture a little bit more of the boards and committees. It's more top of mind instead of forgotten about.
And you have all those chairs and committees working together.
Working
Yeah.
together, and that's what this is all about, like the collaboration of it too. It's, what is that saying, like, let your left hand know what your right hand's doing or whatever, like, they all, like, it would be nice to have like zone, like, and I just even think that is one thing of the implementation, but my idea of just having just a simple forum for them.
I like that much better than just pulling citizens and,
Yeah.
much better.
Me too.
And maybe this collaboration committee is not just a master plan collaboration, it's a town collaboration committee that is each of the chairs, and they just meet a couple times a year, and the master plan is one of their charges, and another one of their charges is communicating with each other. Hey, what issues have you been having with us, or so on and so forth.
Oh, I just really wanna be there. I'll take the minutes of those
How many,
meetings.
how many members are you talking about?
I know, I was wondering the same thing.
I don't know how many
It's
committees there are,
big.
do you know, Sabrina?
It would be,
There was a lot.
32?
Well, we've got.
We don't
32?
need all of
well,
them.
I don't know that we need all of them,
No, I
probably
think we
need
take a
the
look,
highest
no,
level.
I think we take a look at the 7 chapters.
The 7
Yeah.
chapters,
And then
that's all we
identify,
need.
Yeah,
and then identify, you know,
All right.
the main players in that.
yeah, I
She's a
agree.
lovely novel.
Yes.
Wow, not really?
Smart lady.
So we can take that as a,
Fighting for my tongue.
Just waiting.
so we can take that as, we can all kind of think on our own just to move along. We can think about that on our own a little bit as to who we think should be on this town collaboration committee that's charged with this and maybe other things too. I mean, one of the action items is about better communication.
It was a big thing that came up a lot.
It's a serious issue in town,
And
yeah.
especially, when
But I think an advisory board, not knowing a little bit more about their role, I think an advisory board or an advisory committee representative would be a good, because of their role
Yeah.
in town and in town government.
how
I
will
feel
you-
really good about that.
How will you, propose this to the planning board? I mean, if you don't have any say over it, they could just,
Just recommendations.
It's a recommendation.
Would be a good idea.
We
Yeah.
discussed it, yeah.
Mhm.
There's a whole chapter on implementation, so
Yeah.
we can kind of, present it over the course of the next, as we develop on our own and bring it back maybe at the next meeting or two, come to a consensus on what we think, and then as part of our view on implementation, there could be a section there that's our recommendation. And then when we give it to the planning board, they'll say, yeah, we like that recommendation, or we don't, they'll strike it, and they'll put something else in there, or just leave it entirely, it'll be up to them, but I think it's a good recommendation
And
to
I
make.
do think that a committee like that makes sense if we're, the master plan is about what the community wanted. We, pulled them, we're including them, we're live every time we're here. What a better way when we know that the number one complaint or issue was communication, for us to say, hey, the first thing we're gonna do with the master plan is put together a communication group.
Oof,
and
that
committee,
hits,
Right?
that hits.
No, I love
Sabrina
it.
has a point.
Oh, no, don't put me
Yes.
down.
Sabrina,
You can achieve all of this relatively simply. As a select board, you can create any committee you choose. At the debate, create a committee, it's town communication, whatever you wanna call that. You recommend that every board, committee, and commission, pick the 12, 20, whatever, send a representative. The terms of this are, everyone will participate, you'll meet once every month, 2 months, whatever, and give everybody a chance to bring their plans to present to the whole group. There's an open space plan, there's a recreation open space plan, there is the MVP. There's a lot of work that's been done by a lot of boards and committees that would really appreciate a group of people who would share it and actually embrace it. And then all of a sudden, the master plan meets the MVP, meets the open space and recreation plan, and those people bring all of that cohesion back to their board, committee, or commission. You have a standard, we're gonna hold to the bylaw, you miss 3 meetings, I'm gonna contact the chair of that committee and have him send me somebody else. This person has a conflict, can't make the meeting. But you have that authority. You don't require the planning board. But the planning board is land use. Master plan follows land use. So I apologize for interrupting, but you can still get to where you wanna go. You just might have to do it in a way that you've defined in the plan, as increasing and improving communication.
Yeah. And one of the things too, I mean, I'm going
And I'm
back
so sorry.
eons.
I
No,
know.
Thank you.
I want slow clap,
Yeah, I'm standing up. But when I was on zoning, it was one of those things where zoning didn't know what planning was doing, planning didn't know what zoning is, and again, that
But
was a long time ago.
No, because oddly enough, under statute, those two are always a problem in every town.
Yeah,
Because they don't run across, they can sue each other, they
Yeah.
have to be very careful
yeah.
with land use. But that was the thing I wanted to say earlier. When you were talking about stakeholders and who's in charge, like, what is the culture? Why doesn't anybody in Pembroke prioritize land use? Those ballots, planning board seats, nobody's running for them. Why? It's the greatest job.
Sharon?
I mean it. But, I mean, there are folks on the planning board that would love new blood. Stefan is new blood on the planning board. Heather is a new person on the planning board. And that's it. These are people who know their responsibility to the town, care enough about land use. There's nobody coming behind them. The zoning board, we had 3 vacancies for 6 years. 6 years. Begged, borrowed, steal. Josh Cutler got us a volunteer. I was never more grateful. She was fantastic, but it took a while to catch on. We don't prioritize land use. What does that say about us?
Says a lot.
So now, it's one of those things, you come up with this plan, you guys have that light bulb, you feel great about it, share that. And I didn't mean to be a wise guy earlier when I said run for office, but can I just tell you, there are so many opportunities in land use that we may be missing. Bless you for doing the work. I'll just sit back here.
I also think that what's so important about that is, if all of the board chairs are meeting, at least, and I do think once a month should be minimum, and I think that that's just a requirement of being on the boards, right?
Coffee at the library.
Something, anything.
And PowerPoint, real quick,
Yeah,
chit chat.
because if like something comes up, like you're saying about like open space, let's say, and then something comes up at a planning board meeting, and it's relation to open space, at least that chair will be like, hey, oh, you know what? I remember at that meeting, open space was talking about this, because if they don't have those moments, they don't know until after, I'm not picking on planning, I'm just keep on using them, because this is their board. Planning doesn't know, so they could make a decision, but it isn't until afterwards that then open space could come back and say, no, you can't do that because of this. But I think if they're all together, the chair would know and could help communicate all those little pieces. There was a lot of, I just remember, there was just a lot of just miscommunication.
I like that, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Great.
I liked how we worked through that.
let's get it in.
Do we need a motion on that, or are we just jotting down? I mean, I'm not, I don't
We
have
can
one.
do a motion.
I don't have
and
one formulated, but, in my head, I was just wondering if, are we,
Recommends?
or what do we,
To recommend to the,
you know me, I like to walk away with like an actual,
let's do this, let's do
Formulated.
this. I feel like it's still a little half-baked, so maybe if we take it back and then do our thoughts a little bit more, who do we think is gonna be part of this committee, et cetera, and then kind of bring back to the next meeting what our thoughts as to what that would look like. And then we can maybe make a motion then as to whether whether there's agreement on, yes, that's how we're gonna
but is
do
our
it.
end result like kind of Sabrina's recommended that the select board would
That's what my thought is.
form a town collaboration committee,
Right.
made up of
X amount of members.
delegates from stakeholder
list.
committees.
Yep,
Okay,
and I'm
fine,
thinking
that's
like maybe
fine.
pick which boards and committees would be the best ones, cause you don't wanna have a huge, we've seen how difficult it can be to it gets very unwieldy.
Well, we have
you-
seven chapters, kind of to divvy up the.
Yeah, I mean, 7's a good number, maybe up to 9, I don't know if we wanna do more than 9, ideally, I feel like not more than 7, but all of us should have our different ideas as to what that should look like, and then we can bring that back to maybe the next meeting, so I would say that's a good thing for people to think about, bring back next meeting, we'll discuss amongst what we thought was the best amongst what people thought their ideas were, and then we'll take a vote.
And when is our last meeting?
We don't actually have.
When is our next meeting?
You know how to.
We're like a Reese's peanut butter cup almost right there. And yeah, because I think I would love for us to set our own goal, that we sort of have an idea of what we would think that would look like. So, because I do really like the idea of us like presenting it and saying, hey, listen, what we heard was, like I said, communication's most important to you, and this is the committee that we think would work best to implement all of these things.
What is today, Thursday? Do we want to just go with the first Thursday again? March seventh?
It's the
This
second.
is the
we
second
usually go second
Thursday.
Huh?
We go with the second Thursday.
Second Thursday.
Fourteenth?
Yeah.
What's the
You-
first Thursday?
Yeah, cause the 29th is the meeting, we
Yeah.
wanna give it like 2
Yeah.
weeks before the meeting.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
the
idea.
14th?
It's too soon to see everyone.
So
Yeah.
14th.
Yes, it is, thank you.
Yes, 14th.
Do you think we're clear for that, Sabrina?
March the 14th?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the 14th, do you think we'd be clear for that here?
I already have it in my calendar as March 14th, so.
We don't have to have it.
At what time, 6:30 or
6:30.
6:30.
At 6:30.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have it here?
10.
Sabrina's checking.
We're trying, yeah.
I went to a library before I came here.
Oh, you did?
The
I thought it was
14th
gonna be
March.
upstairs.
Yes, yes.
We're clear for this,
Yeah.
right?
Yep,
Yep, thank you.
Oh,
Excellent.
they canceled, that's it.
On that
Oh.
March
Oh,
7th.
they did?
Yeah.
Perfect, 6:30.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Perfect.
Wait, so there's no, so there isn't an end to these amount of meetings? Someone was asking that.
I think probably April or
keep
May
going.
would probably be the
Yeah,
last
please.
one, because it'll be up to when the master plan is presented to the planning board, and then we'll be done on our end. And
Plan was spring,
Oh,
yeah.
it's the last
I
one
think
will
we're about a
probably
month
be
or two behind, right?
What's that?
We're like a month behind where we want, like, the
Well,
original.
we started a
Yeah.
month late, didn't we, ish?
We're on track, but yeah, we started a month late, so we'll probably end a month late, so we're
We're on track to be late.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
that was on track.
And then after it's 100% complete, is that something, do you think the select board could do, like make a suggestion to like present it to the boards as a whole, maybe, like over at the library or something?
I think we should talk to planning first, or at
Yeah.
least touch base with them.
Because I just feel
Move
like,
everybody in.
you know, if you are on a committee, I think you should know something about the town. I don't know if that's a reach.
A committee like this?
Really good idea.
I agree, yeah.
I like your thinking, you should run for select board.
No, I have never run for select board, I just said it out loud.
All right, cool.
All right.
See?
So very
Moving
good,
on
we've
to
got.
one more thing.
All right, moving to the final agenda item. I feel like this one we can do in 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yes, discuss outreach with the community to
Setting the timer.
review and generate ongoing feedback on publicly available master plan draft. I feel like,
That's pretty simple. Social media, is everybody sharing this on social media?
and engaging with our networks too, though.
Yes, but we all sharing
person.
it, we should be sharing that website with everybody, sharing the
Share on-
documents.
Who's sharing, everybody raise their hands if they're sharing on their social media.
The town website is posting it, I've seen that, they're doing really well. We should
Actually,
be
we
telling
got a
everyone.
notice from, the real estate board. Did you get that? From Social Realtors, they sent it to us.
I've been busy with my father, so
Oh.
I've been out of.
Did you
Yeah.
see the chamber has had it, it's on their
You get
website,
sent
it's on
notices?
Chamber,
the
Social
chamber's got a whole
Realtors sent it
page.
to all the realtors
Same
to, that the master plan meeting was happening.
But the chamber does like a highlighted business of the month or something to that
Yeah.
effect, and they
Yeah,
chose the master
spotlight.
plan instead of the,
Oh, good.
yeah, so that's their highlighted.
I can change out, the header on Pembroke Connect maybe even.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I can do that for the meeting, once we have that all 100% with
They're
the
saying,
Zoom link.
Just reach out.
Well, that's a good
That'll be
As
excellent.
much people.
Make the
Yeah,
header, the whole
get
thing
people to
the
come
headers.
out, get people to,
Maybe
all
sharing it
feedback on the
remotely, I guess.
website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to
Who's
pin
gonna
it
do
to.
that?
Everybody's
Yeah.
kind of responsible.
And then if you'll come out next week,
One meeting,
He was asking, he was asking, sorry.
you have a
James had a
question?
question.
I was asking who's responsible for reaching out to
Jim was
the community?
all of us.
Yeah.
All of us,
All
of us,
all of
okay.
us,
All right.
yes.
We're gonna have one of those signs in the center of town that kind of just displays the town meeting thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's always helpful too.
That's historic.
Not
Why don't
everyone
you,
drives
you wanna
through
complain
town.
to somebody, complain to this guy right over here.
Not everyone
digital
drives
sign?
through town, but it's still.
Are you talking about the digital one?
Not, I mean, it's the HDC.
Yeah.
Lord, does that really bother you? God,
That
Scott.
bothered you? No. I found that to be helpful. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, if they can put it out for a carnival, certainly they can put it out for like a forum, right?
There's desire for it, but there's difficulty in the Center Protection District. around having flashing lights and.
I'll go
Yeah.
for,
And so maybe you
I'll
put it at a
go for
different
a weed
spot then.
permit and I'll put it in my front yard of my office.
Can we just change the
Can I do
message
that?
of slow down on the, right here to?
Oh, we do, oh, you're not
Master
talking about a
plan.
permanent fixture, you're just talking about a sign, like
A
in
sign.
general. Yeah, we could do
General
that.
sign.
Like the town, you know,
Yeah.
You're
once-
talking about the digital one?
yeah.
Like we announced the
Oh,
town
what?
meeting,
It's
Yeah.
out-
can't we
it's
just
out
use?
sitting out there
One
right
thing
now.
I just wanna, a little careful is, it is just gonna be at the, library, so it's
Yeah.
very limited space. I don't know that we want too many people coming. We do want people to attend, but we want more people to attend remotely, if anything, because that's gonna be even smaller than the first public forum space that we had at the high school.
So can the sign just say attend remotely?
And I think that we're limited on
I
what
mean,
we
I'm just
place
trying to
on
guess
the
like
Yeah.
library.
as many people to come, but remotely, right, so you just.
Put a Zoom
Well, I think
hyperlink
that would
right
be a
there.
good
Yeah,
one.
Zoom,
Yeah.
hyperlink, exactly.
To have all those people show up
Aren't
if we put
aren't
a
we
sign.
limited on what can be on that sign anyway?
By character, yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, I meant by what, literally
Yes,
what.
it can't
Like
be
we couldn't-
flashing, it can't be
we
colors,
couldn't put the
it
fish
can't
fry
be,
on it.
yeah, I sat on zoning and I remember it was a
Anyway.
big, yeah, but,
For a permanent sign, but,
perhaps.
yeah.
yeah.
Hey, Steve,
Still no.
Mr. Chairman, who sets up the, town of Pembroke website? Because I get notices, I got one at 5 o'clock for discolor water, you know, I mean, who sets this up? You have to
Sabrina?
subscribe to it?
How many people do you think work here?
Are you talking about
Army,
subscribing
that's
to
it?
the email?
Sabrina does it all, if you
Yes.
really want to be.
If you wanna talk with her after the meeting,
Website, Facebook,
Yep.
Twitter, yes, LinkedIn,
yeah.
you name it, sure.
I don't remember subscribing.
Can we
I
ask,
get them.
I was gonna say, I can help you, I'll show you how to unsubscribe if you don't want them.
To the very bottom,
At some
says
point, you must
unsubscribe.
have subscribed
Oh.
for news and alerts. So now you're getting.
I just
news
don't
and alerts.
remember subscribing to it, that's all.
If you wanna, I would say after the meeting, or, tomorrow or
Nobody
something.
would have subscribed you, I
Yep.
do swear to you. I don't have those level of resources. The day ends, I have to go home at some point.
Because my younger son and my younger daughter lives in this town,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
they don't get these.
I think,
You have to
Does that
actually
cover
sign up
everything?
for it.
You have to sign up, okay.
so I think we've covered everything when it comes to outreach to the community, so we're all taking charge as individuals to outreach the community? Yes?
Yes.
Very
Are we
good,
not doing a
all right.
sign? Are we doing a sign?
Are we doing what?
Sign.
Oh, well, we don't really
I don't think
have
we have to act.
ownership of it, but we could ask.
Okay.
Who has ownership of it?
I thought it was the police department, wasn't it?
Belongs to the recycling center.
Oh,
The
interesting.
police department program it, and we'll accept your request.
Okay. We'll
Why
talk
don't
about it
we-
later.
I was gonna say, if you shoot an email, you shoot
Perfect.
an email
Yes.
with what you wanted to say, and you gotta
Okay.
think it out, cause
We
you
will.
have
How many
3
characters?
panels, 3 lines.
Gotcha.
All right, Tracy and Sabrina,
I'll take care of that.
they'll work on that, see if they can get the sign in the center of town. Excellent.
It really does depend on whether something else is going on.
We know.
Huge power outage, town meeting, no.
It's typically used for, yeah, I know.
Emergencies.
All right.
Yep.
Very good, good timing.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Ed?
Yes.
I'd like to make a
Second.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, motion's made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.